What if everything you see is shaped not by reality, but by your brain's assumptions? Imagine two lines, absolutely equal in length. One ends with arrowheads pointing inward like D, and the other with arrow tails pointing outward like. You look at them and immediately think, one is longer. But they're not. Your brain has made a mistake. This is the Müller-Lyer illusion, and it reveals how your mind rewrites reality before you're even aware of it. Discovered in 1889 by Franz Karl Müller-Lyer, this illusion isn't just a visual quirk. It's a psychological mirror. Your brain evolved in a world of corners, edges, and depth. So, when you see these arrows, your mind doesn't see lines. It sees context. The inward arrows mimic a hallway retreating into space. The outward ones, a shape pushing toward you. Even though both lines are flat, your brain adds imaginary depth, and suddenly, two identical lengths appear dramatically different. What's truly unsettling is that this illusion persists even when you know it's false. You can measure the lines, verify their equality, and still, your mind whispers they're not the same. That's the power of unconscious processing, buried beneath rational thought. Even more fascinating, people from different cultures experience it differently. In rural environments without sharp corners, metal edges, or constant exposure to rigid architecture, the effect is weaker. Your environment sculpts your perception. You don't just see, you interpret every shape and shadow, influenced by what your world taught your brain to expect. So, if your brain can distort something as simple as a line, what else is it reshaping? What other truths do you live by that are really illusions? The Müller-Lyer effect is a glitch in the way we perceive, a fault line in reality. And once you see it, you start questioning everything. Imagine looking at a spinning mask. As it turns, the inside, its hollow concave side, suddenly appears to bulge outward. You know it's hollow. You can even watch it rotate and see the illusion play out in real time. But your brain refuses to accept the truth. This is the hollow mask illusion, and it reveals something startling about how we perceive reality. This isn't just a visual trick. It's a direct confrontation with your brain's expectations. Human faces are so crucial to survival, recognizing emotion, identity, threat, that your brain develops a powerful assumption. Faces always bulge outward. They're convex. So, when you're shown the opposite, when the mask turns to reveal its hollow side, your mind forcefully corrects it, flipping the image to match your expectations. Even when lighting and shadows clearly show the mask as concave, the illusion holds strong. The moment it rotates, the back of the mask looks like it's staring back at you. The nose appears to push outward. The cheeks and eyes animate as if real. Your brain rewrites the rules of depth perception to maintain the illusion of a normal, outward-facing face. This illusion is so powerful, it even bypasses logic. You can measure the surface, touch it, analyze its structure, and yet, your perception stays wrong. That's because the brain isn't designed for truth. It's designed for speed, for efficiency, for survival. Strangely, people with schizophrenia are less likely to be fooled by this illusion. Their brains don't make the same assumptions about faces. That eerie detail suggests something profound. Our grip on reality may depend on how willing we are to see what isn't there. So ask yourself, how much of what you see is real, and how much is your mind filling in the blanks? The hollow mask. Illusion doesn't just bend space, it bends trust. Because if you can't believe a face, what can you believe? What if your brain couldn't agree with itself? Imagine seeing the word red written in bright blue ink. Your eyes recognize the letters instantly, but when asked to say the color of the ink, not read the word, you stumble. That pause, that mental friction, is the Stroop effect in action. It's not just a delay. It's a battle inside your brain, where two systems clash for control over a single task. Discovered by John Ridley Stroop in the 1930s, this effect isn't just about colors or words. It's about the hidden architecture of your mind. Reading is automatic. Once you learn it, you can't turn it off. But identifying a color, that's slower, more deliberate. So when you see the word red in blue ink, your automatic reading response says red before your conscious control can interrupt and say blue. The two signals conflict, creating a measurable delay. It's like your brain is trying to drive with one foot on the gas and the other on the brake. The Stroop test is often used in cognitive science to measure processing speed, attention, and even brain damage. It shows that your conscious mind isn't always in charge, that some responses run on autopilot, and breaking free from them takes real effort. What's more disturbing is how this conflict mirrors daily life. How many times do your instincts say one thing while your logic says another? The Stroop effect proves that even basic perception is a negotiation. You're not just one voice, you're a chorus of competing systems. So next time your brain hesitates, ask yourself, who's really in control? Because if reading a single word can disrupt your thoughts, how many other decisions are shaped by silent battles you'll never even notice? Imagine walking into a room where one person appears to tower like a giant, while another seems child-sized. Yet, both are adults. You blink, confused, step back, shift angles. But the illusion holds. This is the Ames room illusion, a mind-bending trick that exploits your deepest assumptions about geometry and space. The room isn't what it seems. Its floor is sloped, its walls aren't square, its windows and ceiling are trapezoids disguised as rectangles. And yet, your brain insists it's a normal, symmetrical space. Why? Because your mind craves order. It assumes rooms are rectangular, walls are parallel, and floors are level. The Ames room plays on that trust. From a specific viewpoint, usually through a peephole, it looks ordinary. But shift positions, and the lie unravels. What you thought was reality becomes an engineered distortion. This illusion, created by ophthalmologist Adelbert Ames in 1946, is more than a visual curiosity. It's a demonstration of how your brain prioritizes symmetry over truth. When forced to choose between what the eyes see and what the mind expects, the brain often defaults to expectation. In the Ames room, that means wildly misjudging size and distance. What's even more unsettling is how fast and confidently your perception locks in the illusion. One person seems to shrink as they walk across the room. Another appears to grow with each step. Your depth cues collapse, and even when told how it works, you still can't unsee it. So ask yourself, how many of your beliefs are built on similar illusions? If space itself can lie to you, what else has your brain quietly reshaped, all in the name of making sense? The Ames room doesn't just distort perspective, it cracks the foundation of certainty. What if you heard a sound that never stopped rising? Imagine a tone climbing upward, endlessly. It feels like it's always getting higher, higher, yet it never actually goes anywhere. That's the Shepard tone illusion, an auditory paradox where your brain can't find a beginning or an end. The sound loops forever, an acoustic staircase with no top step. You're trapped in an auditory illusion that exploits your brain's hunger for resolution. Created by cognitive scientist Roger Shepard, this effect combines multiple tones layered in octaves. As the pitch rises, the higher frequencies fade out, while the lower ones fade in, so smoothly that your brain stitches them together as a single, continuous climb. There's no peak, just the illusion of eternal ascent, like watching a wheel spin in place, or staring at an escalator that never arrives. It plays with your brain's need for structure and closure. It's been used in films, games, and music to create tension. Think of that sinking, unsettling feeling in a Christopher Nolan scene, the anxiety swelling as the Shepard tone climbs. You can't escape it. Your brain keeps waiting for the moment it resolves, but it never does. You feel suspended in sound, caught in an infinite loop of buildup without release. And that's what makes it so deeply disturbing. We crave closure. A song ends, a note resolves, a melody completes. But with the Shepard tone, you're caught in a loop that defies logic. And your mind, desperate for answers, just keeps following it, up and up and up. So if the sound can deceive this deeply, what else might you be hearing that isn't really there? When even your ears can't be trusted, the line between real and illusion starts to blur. And in that endless rise, you start to realize you were never climbing. You were falling into perception itself. What if your brain could make you feel like you're walking in circles when you haven't moved at all? Imagine this. You're sitting in a dark room, headphones on. A soft, consistent sound, like a slow footstep on concrete, echoes in your ears. It's steady, identical each time. But then, something feels off. The steps seem to move, shift, approach from the left, then right, then behind. But nothing changed, except which ear heard them first. This is the footsteps illusion, a proven auditory phenomenon rooted in how your brain processes spatial sound. When identical noises alternate rapidly between your left and right ears, your brain struggles to pinpoint their origin. It interprets movement where there is none, mapping imaginary paths around you. Even though the sound is static, your perception insists it's dynamic. Walking past, circling, stalking. This illusion taps into how we evolved to survive. Our auditory system is trained to detect threats in the dark, especially footsteps. So, when our ears are tricked, the brain paints a moving picture to protect us, even if it's false. In clinical tests, blindfolded subjects turned or shifted their posture, absolutely certain someone was moving around them. Game designers and sound engineers use this trick to create immersive horror, manipulating fear with nothing but sound. Now, amplify it. Add multiple layers, footsteps that echo in different rhythms, bouncing between ears. It creates an invisible crowd, approaching, surrounding, retreating. You feel watched, hunted, haunted. It's terrifying and real. Just a stereo file, just your mind. How much else do you believe? Simply because you heard it? Your ears may be honest, but your brain fills in shadows that were never there. What if your mind could flip reality like a switch, without you even noticing? Imagine staring at a spinning dancer. She's not real, just a shadow, an ambiguous 2D silhouette twirling endlessly in one direction. Or is it two? With just a blink or a breath, her rotation suddenly reverses. Clockwise becomes counterclockwise. The truth? She was never spinning in either direction. Your brain is the one moving. This phenomenon is called the brain rotation illusion, and it's not just an internet trick. It's a window into how your perception constructs reality. The image itself offers no depth cues. There are no shadows, no lighting, no environment to anchor your spatial understanding. So your brain improvises. It guesses. And because the visual data is so vague, your brain's interpretation can flip, randomly or with training. Some people report they can control the direction with concentration. Others find it shifts uncontrollably. Researchers once believed it revealed hemispheric dominance, left brain logic versus right brain creativity. But more recent studies suggest it's about perceptual bias and how we resolve visual ambiguity. It's not about which hemisphere is stronger, but how flexible your visual cognition is under uncertainty. Try focusing on her feet, or imagine her turning in the opposite direction. The switch might happen, and when it does, it feels almost supernatural, as if you've hacked your own mind. But you haven't. You've just witnessed the moment your brain stopped processing reality and started inventing it. It's the same reason you sometimes mishear lyrics or see faces in clouds. Your brain doesn't wait for certainty. It fills in the blanks. What you saw wasn't wrong. It was your version of truth, and the real illusion is believing there's only one. What if your mind could betray your sense of motion in the most silent, seamless way? Imagine a rectangular window frame spinning slowly on your screen. At first, it rotates clockwise, but then, without warning or change, it appears to reverse. You stare harder, but it switches again, back and forth like reality itself is stuttering. This is no magic trick. This is the window frame illusion, a real phenomenon that reveals how your brain reconstructs 3D motion from 2D inputs and often gets it completely wrong. The illusion works because the frame's shape is symmetrical, offering no clear front or back. Lacking depth cues like shading, overlap, or background reference, your brain doesn't receive enough information to lock the direction. So it makes a guess. And that guess can suddenly reverse, even though the actual image hasn't changed. The flip isn't in the video, it's in you, buried in the core mechanics of how your brain prioritizes sense over fact. This illusion isn't limited to screen experiments. It mimics what pilots sometimes report in foggy skies, when their internal orientation shifts and they feel the plane is banking the opposite way. It reflects what dancers call a spin blur when mid-pirouette. Their perception of rotation resets, causing momentary confusion. It happens because our visual system evolved to be efficient, not accurate. Your brain runs on probability, not certainty. Your brain prioritizes stability, not truth. It uses context, habit, and past experiences to guess what should be happening in space. But when the visual field lacks solid anchor points, the illusion breaks through. The window frame illusion is a glitch, a rare moment when your constructed reality falters, a silent betrayal by your senses, a reminder that even motion, that most fundamental of sensations, is just a guess your brain hopes is true. What if the walls around you began to tilt, not because they moved, but because your brain insisted they did? Imagine standing in front of a tiled cafe wall, each row perfectly aligned, yet somehow appearing crooked, as if the world itself had a subtle, sinister lean. Welcome to the café wall illusion, a visual paradox that warps perception while leaving reality untouched. This isn't just visual trickery, it's a scientific window into how your mind interprets contrast and alignment. The illusion arises when rows of black and white tiles are slightly offset, separated by thin gray lines. Your brain, hardwired to detect contrast on edges, doesn't process the image as static. Instead, it introduces tilt and distortion to make sense of the staggered visual input, creating a ripple effect where there is none. This bizarre effect was first documented in the 1970s, spotted on the exterior wall of a café in Bristol, England. Despite the lines being perfectly horizontal, the misalignment fools your neurons. The mortar's gray tone acts like a neutral buffer that your brain misreads as a gradient, subtly twisting the angles of nearby tiles. It's not your eyes that are broken, it's your brain's shortcut system, misfiring under optical pressure. It's deeply unsettling because the image doesn't move, yet your perception won't stop shifting. The longer you stare, the more unstable it feels. Your rational mind knows the truth, but your visual system refuses to obey. Even when rulers prove the lines are straight, your mind sees waves. It's a glitch in the way we parse order and symmetry, a visual ghost that haunts even the most precise patterns, reminding us that sight can lie. What if the world around you could vanish without ever moving a muscle? Imagine staring at a single dot on a wall. You lock eyes with it, holding your gaze for seconds, then minutes. Slowly, without warning, everything in your peripheral vision begins to dissolve. Colors fade, shapes blur. Your room, your world, disappears into a soft void. You're not dreaming. You're witnessing the Troxler effect, one of the strangest tricks your brain plays on reality. Discovered by Ignaz Troxler in 1804, this phenomenon reveals how perception is not a direct mirror of reality, but a filtered, biased reconstruction. Your eyes constantly perform microsaccades, tiny, jittering movements, to refresh visual input. But when you force your eyes to fixate on one point, that movement stops, and your brain, ever efficient, decides to discard anything deemed unchanging. Think of staring at your own face in the mirror. After a while, features may morph, blur, or even seem to melt away. That's not magic. It's neural adaptation. The longer the sensory input remains constant, the more the brain tunes it out. It's the same reason why the ticking of a clock fades into silence, or why a smell disappears after a few minutes. The Troxler effect is a chilling reminder of how our brain edits reality. It deletes data it thinks we don't need to save mental energy. But in doing so, it reveals something deeper, how easily we miss what's right in front of us. What else are we blind to, simply because we aren't paying attention? How much of the world do we never truly see? In this haunting silence of fading edges, we're left to wonder, is reality what we observe or what our brain lets us believe? The mind, in its silent edits, becomes the ultimate illusionist, hiding truths in plain sight. What if you could watch reality change direction without anything actually moving? Imagine looking at a simple line drawing of a cube. It's called the Necker cube. No shading, no color, just 12 thin lines on a white page. And yet, as you stare, something surreal happens. 1 second, you're sure the front face is on the left. A blink later, it flips. Now the front is on the right. But nothing moved. The cube never changed. Your brain did. This isn't an illusion in the traditional sense. It's a battle between competing realities. The Necker cube is what scientists call an ambiguous figure, where your visual system doesn't have enough depth cues to make a final decision. Your brain fills in the gaps with guesses, then second guesses, then flips. And the longer you stare, the more unstable it becomes. That discomfort you feel, that's the scaffolding of perception, wobbling under uncertainty. Try to hold on to one perspective. You'll fail. The brain betrays your efforts. It shifts the cube again, sometimes slowly, sometimes in a sudden jolt. And you're reminded that perception isn't just observation, it's construction. This illusion shows your brain building a 3D world from 2D cues. And when that construction lacks clarity, it loops endlessly, like a system stuck between two versions of truth. In psychological studies, some participants experience eye strain, cognitive fatigue, or even emotional unease. A few describe it like déjà vu, or a dream they can't wake from. A simple cube becomes a meditation on how fragile certainty truly is. So, if a few harmless lines can fracture your sense of what's real, how many other things in your world are built on illusions your brain won't let you see? What if your eyes could lie to your ears, and your brain simply accepted it as truth? Imagine this. You hear the sound ba, but you're watching someone's lips clearly say ga, yet what you perceive, what you genuinely believe you heard, is da. That's the McGurk effect, and it reveals a startling truth. Your brain trusts your eyes more than your ears when processing speech. This illusion is not a trick. It's a scientifically proven, repeatable phenomenon where conflicting visual and auditory information leads to a fused perception that doesn't match either original source. It's not that you're mishearing. It's that your brain is creating a new sound entirely, blending what it sees with what it hears. It's a multisensory failure. Or maybe a survival strategy hardwired into our species. Think about how you understand speech in a noisy room. You unconsciously rely on visual cues, lip movements, facial expressions, eye contact to fill in the blanks. Your brain evolved to prioritize sight for survival, for detecting danger, for reading intention. But that same adaptation becomes a glitch when audio and video don't match. In experiments, even when participants are told the truth, that the sound is ba, most still hear dei because the visual input overrides the auditory reality. Your senses don't vote on truth, they conspire. And this doesn't just affect speech, it suggests something deeper. Your senses are not separate, they're intertwined, fused in neural circuits that demand coherence, even if it means creating a lie. This effect reshapes how we think about perception. Reality isn't passively received, it's actively constructed, layered by assumption, expectation, and prior experience. What you think you hear is not always what was said. Sometimes, it's only what your brain allows you to believe. What if nonsense could become meaningful, not because it changed, but because your brain needed it to? Imagine sitting in a dim, silent room, headphones on, listening to a loop of meaningless syllables, repeating, robotic, rhythmically absurd. At first, it's nothing, just gibberish. Then suddenly, something clicks. You hear, "No way." Then, "Go home." You rewind it. The same phrases echo back. But the truth? Nothing in that loop ever changed. This is the phantom words illusion, a strange, real, and disorienting phenomenon where the brain imposes language onto noise. Created by cognitive psychologist Diana Deutsch, this illusion uses precisely timed loops of random syllables like ga, da, or ba. Played over and over, they trick your auditory cortex into finding familiar patterns where none exist. Your brain, starved of meaning, starts inventing it. It stitches phrases from chaos, based entirely on personal biases, cultural memory, past experiences, and subconscious expectations. You might hear comfort. Someone else hears threat. Another hears commands or nonsense, all from the same unchanging sound. This is the same cognitive shortcut, responsible for hearing ghostly voices in radio static, or melodies in the hum of a fan. Your brain evolved not just to detect, but to predict. When the input is unclear, it makes a choice. It manufactures order from the fog. And what it chooses often says more about you than the sound itself. The phantom words illusion is a glimpse into that internal architecture, not just a perceptual error, but a profound insight into the mind's relentless hunger to interpret and construct reality. The voices you hear in those phantom syllables aren't mistakes. They are a reflection, a mirror held up to your inner self. What your brain finds in the chaos might just reveal the deepest parts of you. Fears, memories, echoes of language long forgotten. The illusion isn't about the sound, it's about who's listening. What if your vision was never truly clear, like a television set stuck between channels, flickering with endless static? Imagine waking up and seeing the world covered in a faint layer of shimmering noise, as if snow were falling inside your eyes. For those with visual snow syndrome, this isn't imagination. It's a daily, inescapable reality, one that follows you through every moment, eyes open or closed. Visual snow is a rare and often misunderstood neurological condition where individuals see what appears to be a constant overlay of digital static across their visual field. This isn't a temporary glitch. The snow doesn't disappear with blinking, sleeping, or even shutting your eyes. It's not a retinal issue or a problem with the eye's lens. It originates deeper, within the brain itself. Researchers believe the visual cortex, responsible for interpreting sight, begins misfiring, sending false signals, creating artificial noise over reality. Some patients describe it as a swarm of flickering dots. Others compare it to grainy VHS tape distortion or foggy air sparkling with particles. The illusion is persistent, overwhelming, and often paired with other symptoms like light sensitivity, migraines, and even phantom sounds. For decades, sufferers were dismissed, told it was anxiety or imagination. But new studies confirm it's a distinct neurological disorder, unrelated to vision itself. Yet, no definitive cause has been found. No known cure. For many, it's like living inside a broken broadcast feed. Your eyes tuned to a channel the rest of the world can't perceive. A powerful reminder. Perception is not just passive, it's constructed. And sometimes, that construction is flawed. What if your brain couldn't tell a nightmare from normal, until it was too late? Imagine looking at a photo of a face turned upside down. The eyes and mouth are distorted, maybe even flipped. But something strange happens. Your brain doesn't flinch, it accepts it. Everything looks fine. Now flip that image upright. Suddenly the horror reveals itself. The face is twisted, grotesque, and your brain, once calm, recoils. This is the Thatcher effect, a psychological phenomenon that exposes just how much your mind relies on shortcuts. Named after a distorted photo of Margaret Thatcher that demonstrated the illusion in 1980, this effect isn't a glitch, it's a revelation. When a face is upside down, your brain's facial recognition systems go offline. The holistic processing that normally analyzes relationships between eyes, nose, and mouth can't operate properly. You process the features individually, not as a unified whole, and in doing so, you miss the grotesque. But the moment the image is upright, facial processing kicks in. Suddenly your brain sees the eyes are flipped, the mouth distorted, and you feel it viscerally. It's disturbing, uncanny, like something human, but broken. The Thatcher effect isn't just a party trick. It's a window into how our brains process identity, emotion, and trust. It shows that our perception of faces isn't passive. It's a fragile, lightning-fast computation that fails under odd conditions. So, next time a face looks fine upside down, ask yourself, what horror might be waiting when it turns back? This isn't just visual trickery. It's cognitive vulnerability, hiding in every glance. Your brain, so confident in its perception, becomes a puppet to its own shortcuts. The illusion wins. What if everything you see is filtered through lies your brain believes are facts? Imagine a checkerboard, black and white squares laid out in a crisp, perfect grid. Now, place a green cylinder beside it. Its soft shadow spills diagonally across the board, dimming some squares. Look closely. Square A sits in full light, square B hides in shadow. One looks dark gray, the other a much lighter shade. But here's the twist, they're exactly the same color. This is the checker shadow illusion, a famous optical deception created by Edward Adelson at MIT. It's not about pixels or screens, it's about your brain, its expectations, shortcuts, and failures. When your visual system sees a shadow, it assumes compensation is needed. It adjusts, it corrects, it lies. The square in shadow is perceived as lighter because your brain knows that shadows darken things. But here, that logic backfires, creating a vivid falsehood, a fiction masquerading as sight. Even when the two squares are isolated and placed side by side, your brain resists. It feels impossible. The illusion triggers something deeper, your reliance on context, on expectation, on storytelling. Your brain edits incoming data not for truth, but for usefulness. It sacrifices accuracy for interpretation, without asking for consent. This illusion doesn't just fool your eyes, it dismantles the illusion that you ever see the world as it truly is. So the next time you trust your vision, ask yourself, is this reality or a story your brain desperately needs you to believe? Maybe the scariest part isn't the shadow on the board, but how many shadows your mind has learned to live with. What if one day you looked into a mirror and didn't recognize the face staring back at you? Imagine walking past your family on the street without a flicker of recognition. Not because you're distracted, not because you're unaware, but because their faces are blank slates to you. That's prosopagnosia, face blindness, a real and rare neurological condition that erases the ability to recognize faces, even your own. This isn't forgetfulness or poor memory. People with prosopagnosia can remember voices, names, or other details, but faces, those intricate patterns of eyes, nose, mouth, fail to register as unique. It's like looking at a puzzle where all the pieces are the same shape. The brain's facial recognition center, the fusiform gyrus, either malfunctions or never developed properly, making the world a blur of strangers. Even when surrounded by loved ones, some are born with it. Others develop it after brain injury or stroke, and the severity varies. A person might confuse characters in movies, struggle at social gatherings, or fail to identify a close friend until they speak. In extreme cases, a mirror reflects a stranger's face, your own features stripped of familiarity. Imagine that confusion, the quiet panic. Prosopagnosia isn't a flaw in sight, it's a fracture in perception. Faces are central to human connection, emotion, and trust. Losing that is like losing a language. People learn to cope, using hairstyles, voices, body shape, but the struggle is constant, invisible. Now imagine navigating the world where every meeting is a first impression, every encounter uncertain. That's not a glitch, it's reality, for those who live without the most basic form of recognition, the human face. What if you could hear something that didn't actually exist, because your brain insisted it was there? Imagine listening to a melody. The notes are clear, but there's a deep bass hum that seems to hold everything together. You feel it in your chest. But here's the twist. That low-frequency tone isn't playing at all. Your ears never received it. Your brain invented it. This is the missing fundamental illusion, a strange and real phenomenon where the bass frequency of a sound isn't present, but the mind adds it anyway. It happens because complex tones are made of harmonics, higher frequencies that are multiples of a fundamental tone. Even if the lowest frequency is removed, your brain uses the pattern of overtones to guess what the fundamental should be. It then fills in the missing note, creating the illusion of a sound that was never played. This is why small speakers, like those in phones or laptops, can still produce the sense of bass, even though they can't physically generate low frequencies. It's not a flaw, it's auditory brilliance. Your brain prefers consistency and structure. When information is missing, it doesn't just give up. It fills in the gaps based on experience and expectation. This same process helps you understand muffled speech or hear music through walls. It's pattern completion, an internal reconstruction of external chaos. The missing fundamental illusion reveals how much of what we hear is not passive reception, but active construction. The bass note feels real because your brain says it is. And in that space between what's heard and what's assumed, sound becomes suggestion, a ghost note, a fiction stitched into truth by the mind's craving for completeness. What if your eyes saw motion where there was none? Imagine staring into a spinning vortex, hypnotic, endless, pulling you in like gravity itself. You finally look away, and yet the world keeps moving. The wall shifts, the floor ripples. Your vision feels warped, unstable, as if the spiral still lives inside your brain. This isn't a hallucination. It's real. It's called the motion after effect, or, more vividly, the spiral illusion. This surreal experience is rooted deep in the brain's visual processing centers. When you stare into a rotating spiral, motion-sensitive neurons in the visual cortex become overstimulated and begin to fatigue. Your brain adapts to the one-way motion by lowering its sensitivity. The moment you look away, the balance tips. Neurons tune to the opposite direction, fire more strongly, and suddenly, you see a phantom spin, an echo of movement where none exists. It's why waterfalls seem to rise, why carpets appear to undulate, why the ground breathes beneath your feet. This is not a malfunction, but a recalibration, your brain scrambling to restore equilibrium after being visually overloaded. It's your nervous system trying to right itself, blindly compensating in the absence of motion, echoing the past into the present. Even when forewarned, the effect hits hard. It's a tug-of-war between perception and reality, between memory and presence, a moment where the brain lags behind the world. You don't just witness an illusion, you feel it, deep in your eyes, deep in your brain. The spiral may vanish, but its imprint remains like a shadow burned onto your vision, a neurological ghost, a false reality that feels disturbingly real. What if your mind couldn't understand what a mirror is, even if you stared into one? Imagine looking at a reflection of a cup on a table. Most of us instinctively reach for the real object, not the illusion. But for some, the brain fails to process that barrier. They reach into the mirror, confident, confused, grasping at a world that doesn't exist. This isn't a metaphor. It's a real neurological disorder called mirror agnosia. People with this condition, often after a stroke or brain injury, lose the ability to interpret reflections properly. Even though they can describe what they see, they can't connect the mirrored image to its actual spatial origin. In one case, a patient was shown a brush in the mirror and, rather than turning around to grab it, kept trying to reach into the glass. When asked why they couldn't pick it up, they simply said, "It's right there." This disorder typically arises from damage to the right parietal lobe, an area responsible for spatial awareness and attention. The brain's map of reality gets skewed. It's not vision that's broken, it's understanding. The mirror becomes a trap, a trick, where perception and logic fall out of sync. The world flips, and with it, the rules you once trusted. Think about how unsettling that is. A mirror, once a tool, becomes a portal of deception. Objects appear reachable, but are forever out of grasp. It's not illusion, it's misinterpretation. Reality breaks down at the edges of glass, and those edges don't warn you. Mirror agnosia forces us to confront a truth. We rely not just on sight, but on the brain's fragile ability to make sense of it. When that wiring is damaged, what's left is a haunting dance with a reflection that never answers back. What if your vision could haunt you, long after you stop looking? Imagine staring at a bright red square in the center of a white screen. You lock your gaze. 30 seconds pass, maybe 60. You feel the tension build in your eyes, as if the color is burning itself into your brain. Then, suddenly, the red square vanishes. But something strange appears in its place, a ghostly green shape, flickering on the blank screen, even though nothing is there. You blink. You look away. The green lingers, like a phantom memory your eyes refuse to erase. This is the color afterimage illusion, a real and eerie quirk of human vision. When you stare at a vivid color for too long, the cone cells in your retina become overstimulated. They begin to dull their response to that specific wavelength. Your visual system, trying to stay balanced, compensates by activating the opposing color on the spectrum once the image disappears. Red becomes green. Blue turns orange. Yellow shifts to violet. These aren't digital tricks. They're physiological reactions, chemical corrections your nervous system makes without your permission. You're not seeing an image. You're seeing an echo, a visual ghost, a reflexive hallucination. Some people experience intense afterimages that follow them for minutes, even with eyes closed. Artists use this to master color blending. Neurologists use it to test eye fatigue and perception. Military pilots are trained to recognize and resist them during night missions, where a flash of color could create phantom threats. But for most of us, it's a reminder. What you see can outlast what's real. So if your eyes deceive you after the image fades, how many illusions stay long after you think you've looked away? What if your ears could warn you of danger before your brain even had time to think? Imagine hearing a sound, soft at first, but rapidly growing louder, closer, sharper. Your heart rate spikes, your muscles tense, you brace for impact. That reaction? It's ancient. It's called the auditory looming bias, a built-in survival system that treats approaching sounds as more urgent, more threatening, and more important than ones fading away. Your brain doesn't process all sounds equally. A rising volume or pitch, signaling that something is moving toward you, triggers a far stronger emotional and physiological response than the same sound moving away. It's not just instinct, it's evolutionary design. In the wild, missing an incoming predator could be fatal, but ignoring a retreating one, that's safer. Scientists have studied this bias using simple tones played through headphones. When a sound grows louder, as if an object is approaching, participants consistently rate it as more urgent, even threatening. But when that same sound fades, implying distance, they relax. Their brains literally calculate danger based on directionality and speed of change, and the reaction is fast, unconscious, automatic. This bias is so powerful that it's even used in alarm systems and film scores. Think of a car crash scene in a movie, the sound that rushes forward even when you're just watching. It's the auditory illusion of danger, and your brain, unable to ignore it, pulls your body into panic. We are wired to respond to looming threats. Not just see them, but hear them coming. Because in a world of predators, the ear became a radar. And even now, in modern times, a rising sound still hijacks the nervous system. You feel it in your chest, in your spine. It's not just noise, it's survival in sound. What if touching something cold and something hot at the same time didn't feel like both, but like pain? Imagine this. A metal rod heated to a safe warmth is placed on one part of your skin. Another rod, chilled to harmless cold, is placed nearby. Separately, they feel fine. But then they're pressed together on your arm, one hot, one cold. And suddenly the sensation isn't mixed. It's sharp, unbearable, burning pain. But there's no danger, no injury, just confusion. This is the cold spot illusion, an unnerving glimpse into how your body processes conflicting signals. Your skin is lined with thermoreceptors, specialized sensors that detect heat and cold. But they don't work independently. When opposing signals hit the same region, your brain panics. It tries to interpret the conflicting data. Is it burning? Is it freezing? In the chaos, it misfires and screams. Pain. Not because the skin is damaged, but because the sensory system's logic breaks down entirely under pressure. This illusion isn't just a lab trick. It happens in everyday life. People have reported pain from touching snow with slightly warmed fingers, or from holding a cold drink right after handling a hot pan. It's a crosswire between thermal input and the brain's threat detection system. It's like a false fire alarm triggered by sensory contradiction, a system built to protect you, now overwhelmed by confusion. The cold spot illusion reminds us that pain isn't always a direct signal from damage. Sometimes it's an interpretation, a neural forecast built from incomplete data. In the absence of clarity, your brain errs on the side of danger. And so, what you feel isn't heat or cold, but a phantom blaze, a hallucination of harm, summoned entirely from internal conflict. What if your brain could be tricked into claiming ownership of something that wasn't yours, something lifeless and fake? Imagine sitting at a table. Your real hand is hidden from view. In its place sits a rubber hand, pale, motionless, and cold. Yet, as someone gently strokes both your real hand and the rubber one in perfect synchrony, something strange starts to happen. You begin to feel the touch on the rubber. Your brain starts believing the lie, and then, without realizing, it becomes truth. This is the rubber hand illusion, a startling window into how fragile our sense of body ownership really is. Your mind isn't just passively observing, it's constructing reality, moment by moment, based on whatever sensory inputs it can trust. And when vision and touch collide in perfect harmony, your brain rewrites the script. It adopts the fake as your own flesh, seamlessly stitching the illusion into your perception of self. In labs around the world, this illusion has been recreated repeatedly. When the rubber hand is struck or threatened, subjects flinch, gasp, or even sweat. Their brains fire pain signals, their hearts race. The fear is real, even though the threat isn't. The brain has fully accepted the artificial limb as part of its body map. Even stranger, many report a creeping numbness in their real hidden hand, a fading presence, as if the body can't hold two truths at once. This is called disownership, the silent dismissal of your own limb in favor of something that never lived. It's unsettling proof that your brain doesn't just know your body, it negotiates it. And sometimes, identity is only as stable as the illusion your senses choose to embrace. What if walking through a doorway could erase your thoughts? Imagine standing in your kitchen, intent on grabbing your keys. You walk into another room, and suddenly, nothing. A void. You can't remember why you came in. You retrace your steps, hoping memory will return like a ghost that only appears where it died. This isn't forgetfulness, it's the doorway effect, a glitch in memory caused by the simple act of crossing from one space to another. Your brain organizes experience into event models, mental packets that store what you're doing, where, and why. These models help you function efficiently, but when you pass through a doorway, your brain interprets it as a boundary. The current model ends, and a new one begins. Whatever intention you carried in gets dumped, filed away under the last room. This transition isn't a failure, it's strategy. But it comes with a cost: temporary amnesia. In studies, people asked to carry out tasks across multiple rooms remembered less than those who stayed put. It's not about distraction, it's environmental segmentation. Your brain uses space as a way to separate context, like chapters in a book. Move into a new room, and your brain flips the page, sometimes too early. Think how often it happens. You walk into a closet and freeze. You open the fridge and forget. It feels eerie, like you've stepped into a memory vacuum. And in a way, you have. The doorway becomes a mental reset button. Unexpected, invisible, and relentless. The doorway effect reminds us memory isn't stored like data. It's alive, contextual, and fragile. And sometimes, a simple frame of wood can turn certainty into fog. In that silent pause, we glimpse the fragility of thought, flickering, fleeting, and gone. What if time could lie to you, stretch itself out to fill a moment that never really existed? Imagine this. You glance at a ticking clock. The second hand appears frozen, suspended for just a little too long. Then, it jolts forward. You blink, confused. That first second felt longer than the rest. You didn't imagine it. Your brain did something strange. It edited time. This phenomenon is called chronostasis, a real and studied illusion of temporal perception. It happens most commonly when your eyes make a rapid movement called a saccade, jumping from one point of focus to another. During this instant, your brain suppresses visual input to avoid blur and confusion. But instead of showing you an empty gap, your mind fills in the silence. And it doesn't just fill, it stretches, rewrites, reinvents. When your eyes finally land on the clock, your brain backdates the perception to the moment the saccade began, creating a strange illusion where the second you see lasts longer than any that follow. It's not just clocks. It happens with moving cars, blinking lights, even people turning their heads. For a brief moment, the world feels slower, paused in an eerie stillness. That's chronostasis. Psychologists believe this happens to preserve the illusion of continuity. Your brain hates interruptions in experience, so instead, it forges a seamless timeline, fabricating smoothness out of blanks. It lies not out of malice, but efficiency. The disturbing part? You never realize the edit happened. You walk through life trusting your senses, unaware that your brain quietly manipulates your timeline. Every time you shift focus, there's a ghost second added. So the next time a clock seems to stall, ask yourself, what if that second never existed? And yet, somehow, you lived it. What if your phone buzzed, but only in your mind? Imagine you're deep in thought when you suddenly feel a vibration in your pocket. You instinctively check your phone. Nothing. No messages, no calls. But you were sure. That ghost vibration is called phantom ringing, or Ringxiety, a real, documented neurological illusion caused by a hyperconnected brain, conditioned to expect contact even in its absence. Our modern minds are trained by constant alerts, notifications, vibrations, ringtones. Over time, this feedback loop becomes so strong that your brain doesn't just wait for signals, it begins to create them. Just like you might see a face in a cloud, your mind starts to assign meaning to random sensations like muscle twitches, shifting fabric, or a change in pressure. Your nervous system mistakes them for digital communication, and suddenly, you're reacting to a signal that never existed. In scientific studies, over 80% of mobile phone users have reported this exact phenomenon. And it's not limited to vibrations. People often report hearing phantom ringtones, even when no phone is nearby. These moments happen more often under stress, isolation, or emotional overload, when your brain is already wired for anticipation. The mind, addicted to expectation, fills in the silence with what it fears might be missing, a connection. But here's the twist. This illusion reveals something deeper. Phantom ringing shows how deeply we're wired for feedback. For many, checking a phone isn't just about communication. It's about reassurance. A buzz becomes a symbol of relevance, of being needed. And when that feeling is absent for too long, the brain, desperate to bridge the void, generates one. You didn't imagine it because you're broken. You imagined it because you're human. And in that imagined signal, your brain was simply reaching out, hoping someone was reaching back. What if your phone buzzed, but only in your mind? Imagine you're deep in thought when you suddenly feel a vibration in your pocket. You instinctively check your phone. Nothing. No messages, no calls. But you were sure. That ghost vibration is called phantom ringing, or Ringxiety, a real, documented neurological illusion caused by a hyperconnected brain, conditioned to expect contact even in its absence. Our modern minds are trained by constant alerts, notifications, vibrations, ringtones. Over time, this feedback loop becomes so strong that your brain doesn't just wait for signals. it begins to create them. Just like you might see a face in a cloud, your mind starts to assign meaning to random sensations like muscle twitches, shifting fabric, or a change in pressure. Your nervous system mistakes them for digital communication, and suddenly, you're reacting to a signal that never existed. In scientific studies, over 80% of mobile phone users have reported this exact phenomenon, and it's not limited to vibrations. People often report hearing phantom ringtones, even when no phone is nearby. These moments happen more often under stress, isolation, or emotional overload, when your brain is already wired for anticipation. The mind, addicted to expectation, fills in the silence with what it fears might be missing, a connection. But here's the twist. This illusion reveals something deeper. Phantom ringing shows how deeply we're wired for feedback. For many, checking a phone isn't just about communication. It's about reassurance. A buzz becomes a symbol of relevance, of being needed. And when that feeling is absent for too long, the brain, desperate to bridge the void, generates one. You didn't imagine it because you're broken. You imagined it because you're human. And in that imagined signal, your brain was simply reaching out, hoping someone was reaching back. What if the version of your body your brain sees isn't the one in the mirror, but a twisted, exaggerated creature with enormous lips, oversized hands, bulging eyes, and a swollen tongue? Imagine closing your eyes and trying to feel the shape of your body, not through touch, but through pure internal sensation. What you detect isn't a realistic form. It's a distorted hallucination shaped by sensitivity. This strange internal figure has a name, the sensory homunculus. Inside your brain's somatosensory cortex is a detailed map of your body, but it's not drawn to scale. It's sculpted by sensation. Areas with more nerve endings, like your lips, fingertips, genitals, and tongue, dominate the map, inflating their importance. The result is an eerie, bloated figure that doesn't resemble you, but reflects how your brain feels you. The brain doesn't measure volume, it measures urgency. This explains why a paper cut on your finger feels sharper than a bruise on your back, why a single kiss can feel overwhelming, why your hands are tied to memory and emotion. The homunculus is your brain's way of spotlighting what matters most. It prioritizes survival, intimacy, and pain, all exaggerated for awareness and speed. But it can't always update with reality. Phantom limb pain exists because the brain's body map remains intact, even when the body does not. It sends signals into empty space. The homunculus doesn't care what's physically there. It only responds to sensation. In this way, your identity isn't based on shape, but on signal. You're not just skin and bones. You're a warped masterpiece sculpted by touch, built from the echoes of everything you've ever felt. What if your brain was editing the colors of reality without your permission? Imagine looking at a banana in blue light. Logically, it should appear blue-tinted, but it doesn't. You still see yellow. Your mind refuses to accept what your eyes are telling it. That's not illusion. It's color constancy, a powerful feature of perception where your brain overrides raw data to maintain a stable image of the world. This phenomenon is how we survive in ever-changing environments. Light sources vary constantly. Sunset, shadows, artificial bulbs, yet you rarely notice. A red apple stays red. A white shirt remains white. That's because your brain factors in the surrounding light, compares colors, and subtracts the tint. It recalibrates the world to match what it should be. And it does this in milliseconds, without conscious thought. But sometimes, this system backfires. Think of the dress. Was it blue and black or white and gold? Millions debated because their brains made different assumptions about lighting. One group assumed shadow, another daylight, and so perception split reality in two. Color constancy turned into color conflict. This effect reveals how much of sight isn't visual, it's inferential. Your brain doesn't show you what's there. It shows you its best guess, based on experience and expectation. Bananas are usually yellow, so even when they aren't, your brain paints them that way. Color constancy is your mental auto-correct, blending physics with memory to create a world that feels consistent, even if it's not. It's not just your eyes lying, it's your mind trying to make sense of chaos. And sometimes, in doing so, it hides the truth in plain sight. It's a quiet illusion, one so seamless you never question the world you're shown. What if silence could speak, and darkness could hallucinate? Imagine lying in a chair, eyes covered with halved ping-pong balls, bathed in soft red light, while white noise drones endlessly through headphones. After a few minutes, something eerie happens. Shapes form, voices whisper, colors swirl. You see things, hear things, feel things that aren't real. That's the Ganzfeld effect, a real psychological phenomenon where the brain, deprived of structured input, begins to invent reality. Your senses crave stimulation. When visual and auditory input is reduced to meaningless monotony, the brain doesn't go quiet. It becomes hyperactive, trying to find patterns in the noise. And when none exist, it creates them. Hallucinations. Not because you're dreaming, but because your brain can't tolerate emptiness. The line between imagination and perception blurs. Researchers have used the Ganzfeld setup to study psychic claims, creativity, and altered states. Some participants report out-of-body experiences. Others feel like they're floating, falling, or being watched. A few hear their names spoken from nowhere. In long enough sessions, the hallucinations can become so vivid they're indistinguishable from reality. It's a rare glimpse into how fragile our grip on the external world really is. Your consciousness isn't a window, it's a projector. It fills the void with meaning, even if it has to fabricate it. In sensory isolation, the mind doesn't shut down, it improvises. Now, imagine a world with no stimulus, no light, no sound, no change. Would your mind create dreams or nightmares? With the Ganzfeld effect, we don't just see what's there, we see what we're afraid might be hiding in the silence. What if you were absolutely certain you saw something move in the shadows, but nothing was there? Imagine walking alone at night. Out of the corner of your eye, you catch a flicker, movement. Your heart skips. You turn. It's gone. You're not hallucinating. You're experiencing signal detection theory in action, your brain's complex system for separating real signals from noise. Sometimes, it gets it wrong. Signal detection theory explains how we perceive faint, uncertain, or ambiguous signals. Your brain is constantly analyzing the world through two filters: sensitivity and decision-making. Sensitivity refers to how well you can actually detect a signal, but even more important is your criterion, how willing you are to say, yes, I saw it. When your criterion is low, you're more likely to detect weak signals, but also more likely to have false alarms. In threatening environments, like dark alleys or high-stakes moments, your brain adjusts the threshold. It becomes hypersensitive, willing to trade accuracy for survival. It's evolution's way of saying, better safe than sorry. Seeing something that isn't there could save your life. Not seeing something that is there could end it. This theory applies far beyond survival. Air traffic controllers, doctors reading scans, even people in relationships constantly use these filters, balancing hits, misses, and false alarms. The cost of being wrong isn't always the same, so your brain adapts its strategy. So, next time you're sure you saw a face in a window or heard your name whispered from an empty room, remember, it's not madness. It's your brain detecting signals, sometimes making mistakes, but always trying to keep you one step ahead. What if your memories weren't as real as you believed? Imagine recalling a moment from childhood, a birthday, a conversation, a life-changing decision. You remember the setting, the people, the emotions, but what if none of it ever happened? What if your brain quietly invented the details to fill a gap, and you never noticed? This is confabulation, the brain's eerie ability to fabricate false memories that feel absolutely true. Unlike lying, confabulation isn't deception. It's a glitch in how memory works. When the brain encounters a blank space, caused by trauma, illness, stress, or even ordinary forgetting, it refuses to leave it empty. Instead, it builds a story that feels seamless, a narrative constructed with borrowed fragments, imagined scenes, and logical gaps filled with fiction. And you believe it, completely. It's common in disorders like Korsakoff's syndrome, dementia, or brain injuries. Patients will insist they went to work, visited a friend, or had lunch, when in truth, they never left the room. Their brain creates a reality to protect them from the chaos of memory loss. But confabulation isn't confined to illness. You do it too. You misremember who said what, where something happened, or why you made a choice. Your brain merges emotions, dreams, real events, and imagined outcomes. Your memories feel sharp, but they might be stitched from fragments. And here lies the terrifying truth. Your memory isn't a recording. It's a reconstruction. Your brain values continuity over truth. It edits, omits, rearranges. What you remember is not what happened. It's what your brain believes needed to happen to keep your life story whole. What if one of your clearest memories, something you'd swear happened, never actually occurred? Imagine remembering the exact moment you saw a childhood friend fall off a bike, the color of their shirt, the sound they made. But then, you're told it didn't happen. There's no photo, no witness, no truth. That's the false memory effect, when your brain confidently remembers events that never happened. Not half-remembered, not vague, vivid, detailed, and entirely fictional. This isn't forgetfulness, it's construction. Your memory isn't a recording, it's a reconstruction. Each time you recall a moment, your brain rebuilds it, reshaping it based on current beliefs, emotions, and external suggestions. Sometimes, that reconstruction includes things that never existed, and over time, those invented details feel just as real as the truth. The Mandela effect is a powerful example. Thousands remember Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 1980s. He didn't. Others swear the Berenstain Bears were spelled Berenstein, or that a famous line in Star Wars was, "Luke, I am your father," when it wasn't. These aren't simple mix-ups. They're shared false memories that resist correction. Studies show how easy it is to implant false memories. In experiments, participants were told about fake events from their childhood. A significant number later recalled these events as if they'd truly happened, adding emotional details, sensory impressions, and certainty. That's the scariest part. Your confidence doesn't protect you. In fact, the more confident you are, the more likely the memory is false. So, how many of your memories are inventions? What have you sworn by that never occurred? The false memory effect isn't just about distortion. It's about how fragile your reality truly is. What if one bad moment could distort everything else around it? Imagine waking up late, spilling coffee on your clothes, missing a bus. By the time you get to work, even a neutral comment feels like an insult. The meeting feels hostile. Your tasks seem overwhelming. But here's the twist. None of those things actually changed. You did. You're not overreacting. You're experiencing emotional spillover bias, a deeply studied and real psychological effect where emotions in one context bleed into the next. Your brain isn't a file cabinet. It doesn't store each emotion in a tidy folder. Emotions are chemical waves, and those waves ripple outward, coloring everything they touch. If you're angry, even your memories shift tone. If you're sad, people's faces seem more critical. A good mood can make a rainy day feel romantic. A bad one can turn a sunny afternoon into a nightmare. This isn't weakness. It's how the mind builds continuity across events. Emotion gives your life a narrative arc, but sometimes it takes over the story. Studies have shown that subjects exposed to stress, like loud noises or emotional videos, tend to judge unrelated situations more negatively immediately afterward. This applies to juries, job interviews, parenting, customer service, even romantic decisions. Emotions act like filters. Once a mood takes hold, your brain reinterprets reality to match its emotional forecast. The danger? You start believing the world is as bad, or as good, as it feels. Emotional spillover makes a single trigger stretch across hours. It turns minutes of frustration into whole days of defeat. But recognizing the bias gives you back control. The next time you catch yourself spiraling, pause. It might not be the situation. It might be the echo of something else, a shadow cast by an earlier storm. What if you were blind for moments at a time, and your brain simply erased the evidence? Imagine scanning a room. Your eyes jump from object to object, never gliding smoothly. These rapid movements are called saccades, and during each one, something strange happens. You don't see, not a blur, not a smear, nothing. Your brain shuts down visual processing, creating a momentary blackout every few hundred milliseconds, and yet, you never notice. This phenomenon is called saccadic suppression. It's your brain deliberately ignoring visual input during eye movement. Why? Because if it didn't, your vision would be a chaotic mess of motion blur. Instead, your mind stitches the world together, frame by frame, as if it's stable, as if nothing is missing. But in truth, you're experiencing dozens of visual gaps every minute, silent voids hidden behind the illusion of continuity. It's like your brain is an editor, cutting out the messy in-between scenes and presenting only the polished result. You believe you saw the entire room, but you didn't. Your awareness is a patchwork of snapshots, assembled so smoothly you'd never suspect anything was missing. It's a silent lie that lets you function. Researchers test this by flashing images during saccades. The subject doesn't see them. The brain ignores input it considers untrustworthy. Even a bright light, a flickering word, it all disappears. And the result? We live with an invisible filter, a neural censorship system so seamless it hides its own existence. Now, imagine what else might be happening in those blackouts, what your brain chooses not to show you. Eye movement suppression doesn't just reveal a glitch in perception, it exposes a deeper truth, that what we experience as reality is heavily edited. What if you were going blind for tiny moments every few seconds and never even noticed? Imagine walking through a crowded street, your eyes darting from faces to signs to flashing lights. But every time your eyes move, your brain shuts down vision, temporarily erasing what's in front of you. This is called saccadic suppression, and it's not science fiction, it's real. Your brain deletes what happens during eye movements. You are, quite literally, blind during those moments. Saccades are rapid eye movements that help you scan the environment. But these jumps are so fast and disjointed that if your brain didn't intervene, your vision would blur and distort with every flicker. So it compensates by cutting the feed. During each saccade, your visual system suppresses input, like turning off a camera between shots. You don't see the blur. You don't notice the gap. You only see the stable image before and after, seamlessly stitched together into a clean timeline. You experience this blackout thousands of times a day. In fact, during reading, your brain hides the rapid eye jumps between words. You never see the flicker, only the illusion of smooth movement. And it's not just visual, your sense of time also warps during these suppressed moments. Milliseconds go missing, and you never know they were taken. Entire pieces of your day vanish behind the scenes of perception. This isn't a glitch, it's a feature. Without it, our visual world would be a chaotic blur. But it's also a reminder. What you see isn't reality. It's a reconstruction. A highlight reel edited by a brain that values stability over truth. Every blink, every flicker, every darting glance hides a moment you never lived. And yet, your mind convinces you it was there all along, perfect and uninterrupted. What if the world you're seeing isn't smooth at all, but just fast enough to trick your brain? Imagine looking at an old CRT television or a strobe light flashing at high speed. At first, you notice the flicker, but as it speeds up, something eerie happens. The flashes vanish. You no longer see individual pulses, just a steady glow. This is the flicker fusion threshold, the point where rapid flashes of light blur into continuous perception, and it reveals how your brain blends fragments into seamless illusion. Your eyes don't see motion directly. They catch still frames, like a camera, but the brain stitches these frames together so smoothly that you never notice the breaks. When the flicker rate is slow, say 10 or 20 times per second, you perceive the gaps. But increase it past a critical frequency, often around 60 Hz, and your mind fuses them into a continuous image. That threshold varies based on brightness, fatigue, and even species. Pilots, for example, must train to detect high-speed flicker on instrument panels because what looks solid might be pulsing with unseen data. LED lights, poorly calibrated screens, or even sunlight through spinning fan blades can trigger disorientation. It's why certain strobe effects are dangerous for people with epilepsy. The illusion of stability hides neurological chaos underneath. This phenomenon is the reason you enjoy movies and animations. Films run at 24 frames per second, just enough for your brain to believe in fluid movement. It's not reality, it's clever timing. You're watching still images flash in front of your eyes, and your brain turns the flicker into story. Now, imagine what else your brain fuses without question. What other gaps are being hidden in speed? The flicker fusion threshold isn't just visual science. It's a reminder that even what feels solid might just be fast enough to fake it. What if a simple date on a calendar could convince your brain that everything has changed? Imagine waking up on January 1st or the first day of a new job. Suddenly you feel motivated. You swear this time will be different. Better. But nothing around you has changed. That sudden confidence, it's not always real. It's the clean slate effect, a powerful and scientifically observed illusion where symbolic new beginnings create a temporary surge of willpower. Your brain craves structure. It sees dates and milestones as psychological chapters. New Year's Day, Mondays, birthdays, even the start of a new month become bookmarks for identity. You feel separated from your past self. The failure, the mistakes, they belong to the old you. This perceived distance makes you feel free, capable, energized. You believe you're starting from zero, even when you're not. Researchers have found that gym attendance spikes after New Year's, birthdays, or holidays. People sign up for courses, begin diets, start writing novels, then quietly stop weeks later. Why? Because the surge was emotional, not strategic. The clean slate creates false confidence, a flash of momentum without a solid plan beneath it. And once the novelty fades, so does the illusion. But this isn't weakness. It's a window. The illusion is real enough to harness. If you can recognize that rush for what it is and ground it in concrete steps, the clean slate becomes more than a trick. It becomes a launch pad. So next time you feel the pull of new beginnings, don't waste it. It's your brain giving you energy. Just make sure you also give it direction so that the new you becomes more than a passing mood. It becomes a decision, and that decision, when repeated, is what becomes identity. What if the world around you changed and you didn't notice? Imagine watching a video where a man is talking and without warning, his shirt color changes, or the background shifts, or an object disappears. But your eyes stay fixed, your attention focused, and somehow you miss it completely. That's change blindness, a real cognitive phenomenon where even massive alterations in your visual field go unnoticed, and it exposes just how selective your brain really is. Your vision isn't a camera. It's not recording everything. It's filtering, compressing, highlighting what it thinks matters. That means when your focus is directed toward a face, a voice, or an action, anything else, no matter how obvious, is at risk of vanishing from your awareness. Your brain doesn't register every detail. It registers enough. In famous experiments, people are shown side-by-side images with subtle differences. A building missing a window. A person with a different hat. The change is right there, yet it takes seconds, even minutes to spot. And in real-time videos, the delay is even longer. One study replaced the person behind a counter mid-conversation, and over half the participants didn't notice the swap. This isn't about distraction, it's about expectation. When your brain predicts stability, it doesn't waste effort checking for change. It trusts continuity, but that trust creates blindness. And it's not a flaw, it's a strategy. You're designed to focus on movement, threat, or goal, not on color shifts or slow edits. Now, imagine what else has changed around you without detection. What have you missed not because you looked away, but because your mind decided it wasn't worth seeing? Change blindness isn't a rare glitch, it's your default setting. What if your brain let you off the hook for things you'd judge someone else for? Imagine you're late to work. You blame traffic, poor sleep, or an emergency. But when a coworker arrives late, you assume they're lazy or irresponsible. You don't consider their context, just their character. This isn't hypocrisy, it's psychology. It's called the actor-observer bias, a powerful and well-documented distortion in how we explain behavior. When we judge ourselves, we focus on external causes. The world was unfair, we were stressed, things got in the way. But when we judge others, we zero in on internal traits, personality flaws, poor effort, bad morals. Your brain does this automatically to protect your identity. You are the exception, they are the problem. This subtle mental split allows you to preserve self-esteem, even while being harsh on those around you. This bias shows up everywhere. Drivers cut you off. They're reckless. But when you speed, you're just running late. Someone cancels plans, they're unreliable. You cancel, you were overwhelmed. In relationships, in politics, in conflict. This split perspective fuels misunderstanding. Two people can witness the same event and walk away blaming entirely different causes, both convinced they're right. Studies have shown that the more emotionally close we are to someone, the more we explain their actions like we explain our own. Strangers get judged. Loved ones get context. The further away someone is from your identity, the harsher your interpretation. It's not just a quirk, it's a defense mechanism rooted in self-preservation. But awareness is power. If you can catch yourself in the act, pausing before judging, you can shift perspective. You can trade assumption for empathy. And in that moment, you don't just understand others better, you understand yourself more honestly. And that honesty might be the first step towards something much rarer, real connection. What if your brain could weave a lie without you even noticing the deception? Imagine looking at a set of ropes or wires stretched across a scene. Some go over, some go under. They seem to be intricately threaded, tangled, or interwoven. But then you change your angle, or remove the background, and suddenly, they're not connected at all. That's the threading illusion, a powerful example of visual occlusion, tricking your brain into seeing complex patterns that aren't really there. Your mind is constantly interpreting depth, layering, and spatial relationships based on minimal cues. When one object appears to pass behind another, your brain assumes a connection, a weaving pattern, even if it's a false alignment caused by perspective. We're wired to find order in chaos, to impose structure where none exists. And so, we see threads where there are none. Artists and illusion designers exploit this with deliberate positioning. Arrange a few wires so they alternate over and under, place them against a grid or pattern, and suddenly the mind fills in the rest, imagining a braid, a knot, a woven mesh. The illusion holds until movement or inspection reveals the truth. What looked like intricate structure was only strategic positioning and clever occlusion. This isn't just visual play. It reveals how much of our perception is guesswork. Our brains take shortcuts, building mental models of the world based on assumptions rather than complete data. The threading illusion shows how even simple scenes can deceive, reminding us that sight isn't truth, it's interpretation. Now, imagine how many illusions you've walked past, never questioning. What else seems intricately connected, but isn't? The answer might be right in front of you, hiding behind the things you trust most, your own eyes. What if your brain told you something sharp was stabbing you, but there was nothing there? Imagine waking up after brain surgery and suddenly you feel it, a cold, stabbing pressure in your eye socket, like an ice pick being driven inward. You scream, you flinch, but nothing is touching you. The doctors check. There's no tool, no damage, no wound, and yet, the pain is undeniable. This is the ice pick illusion, a terrifying, scientifically documented experience of phantom perception, triggered by disruption in neural pathways. The brain doesn't just process reality, it creates it. After trauma or surgery, especially involving sensory pathways, the brain can misfire, producing sensations that have no physical cause. Pain becomes a memory loop, an echo of nerves trying to rewire. These phantom sensations feel vividly real because the same areas light up in the brain as if the object were truly there. In essence, your mind plays back a pain signal on repeat, mistaking silence for damage. One patient described the sensation as glass shattering behind the eye. Another felt a metal spike every time they blinked. These aren't metaphors. They are raw sensory hallucinations caused by miscommunication between the brain and body. The illusion is brutal because it can't be removed. It's not external. It lives inside the processing system itself. You can't cut it out. You can only try to retrain the brain to stop generating it. What's even more disturbing is that this illusion proves how pain isn't tied to damage. It's tied to perception. The ice pick illusion is the brain's nightmare made real, a symptom without a source. And it reminds us that the mind is not just a passenger in the body. Sometimes, it's the one pulling the blade and convincing you it's real. What if the moments before sleep weren't empty, but filled with hallucinations your waking mind can't explain? Imagine lying in bed, still awake, but barely. The room is dark. The world is quiet. And suddenly you see it. A flash of light. A figure standing by your door. A voice whispering your name. You sit up. Nothing's there. Or maybe it fades before you can even move. These are hypnagogic hallucinations, real, vivid, and terrifying. This phenomenon occurs in the transitional state between wakefulness and sleep. As your brain begins to relax, but consciousness still lingers, strange things happen. Visual distortions, intense colors, imaginary voices, even full sensory experiences can erupt from nowhere. Some people report falling through the bed, hearing footsteps, or seeing spiders crawl across the ceiling. Others feel a presence beside them. Not a dream. Not yet. Something between two worlds. A moment where reality bends. Scientists believe these hallucinations occur because the brain begins dreaming before you've fully fallen asleep. The thalamus, which controls sensory input, lets in fragments of dreams while your prefrontal cortex, responsible for logic, is still partially online. The result is a waking dream, too vivid to ignore, too real to question. They're more common when you're sleep-deprived, anxious, or under intense stress. Some experience them with sleep paralysis, unable to move while something watches. Others every night accepting it as part of their reality. You might hear a scream or see someone watching you, and it feels real, because to your brain, it is. The line between reality and hallucination isn't as solid as we think. So when your world melts just before sleep, ask yourself, how much of it is real, and how much is your mind showing you what you fear the most? What if your sense of direction suddenly vanished, and there was no way to get it back? Imagine floating in space, surrounded by stars and silence. There's no floor beneath your feet, no ceiling above your head. And yet, your body is desperate to define an up and a down. This disorientation isn't just confusing, it's a real neurological breakdown. It's called the gravity illusion, and astronauts experience it the moment gravity disappears. On Earth, your vestibular system, tiny structures in your inner ear, constantly measures gravity's pull. It tells you which way is down, helps you balance, orients your movement. But in microgravity, those sensors go silent. Your brain, still craving spatial reference, begins to rely more on visual cues. But what happens when those cues contradict each other, or vanish entirely? Confusion, nausea, vertigo. Astronauts report feeling like the room is spinning, even when they're still. Some think they're upside down. Others feel like the station is tilting. Their brains, built for Earth's gravity, can't recalibrate. And in this floating void, even something as simple as standing becomes meaningless. There is no standing, just drifting. Perception collapses. This illusion isn't just a curiosity, it's a challenge for survival. Engineers design spacecraft with intentional cues. Colored lights, oriented panels, even labels that say up. Just to anchor the brain in an environment that doesn't care about direction. Because without gravity, there's nothing to pull your senses into agreement. Now, imagine if this happened on Earth. If your sense of up and down broke. How would you move? How would you trust your own steps? The gravity illusion isn't just a space problem, it's a reminder that your perception of reality is never absolute. It's a fragile collaboration between body, brain, and gravity. What if something completely straight looked crooked, just because of the world around it? Imagine staring at a simple vertical line inside a tilted frame. The line is perfectly straight, yet, to your eyes, it seems to lean. You tilt your head, you blink, but the slant remains. This is the tilt illusion, an unnerving visual phenomenon where surrounding angles distort your sense of orientation. The line never moved. Your equilibrium did. The brain's visual system doesn't operate in isolation. It processes everything relative to context. When a frame is tilted, your brain assumes the tilt applies to the entire scene, so it adjusts your interpretation of what vertical should be. But it overcorrects. It tries to stabilize your perception by compensating for the surrounding skew, and in doing so, warps your sense of direction. This isn't just an abstract optical illusion, it's a window into how your brain merges vision with balance. The tilt illusion activates not only your visual cortex, but your vestibular system, the part of your inner ear that governs orientation and equilibrium. That's why the illusion can sometimes make you feel dizzy or off balance, as if your body believes you're tilting too. Variations of this illusion show up in aviation, architecture, and even road design. Pilots have reported banking in the wrong direction due to tilted horizon lines. Drivers veer on curved roads that look flatter than they are. Your brain wants harmony between what it sees and how it feels in space. And when those signals conflict, perception buckles. So the next time a line seems off, it might not be your eyes. It might be the entire framework your brain is using to make sense of up, down, and everything in between. What if your favorite food suddenly tasted like nothing at all? Imagine holding your nose and popping a jelly bean into your mouth. You feel the sweetness, maybe a hint of texture, but where's the flavor? Gone. That's the flavor confusion effect, and it's a powerful reminder that what we call taste is mostly smell. Your tongue detects just 5 basic tastes: sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and umami. But the rich, complex world of flavor, chocolate, strawberry, garlic, mint, comes almost entirely from your nose. As you chew, volatile molecules rise up the back of your throat and into the nasal cavity. This process, called retronasal olfaction, activates smell receptors and creates the full experience of flavor. Block that path, and the magic vanishes. You're not imagining it. In experiments, people asked to taste flavored foods while wearing nose clips consistently fail to identify even obvious ones. Orange tastes like sugar. Onion tastes like wet cardboard. Everything becomes muted, flat, strange. Only after they remove the clip does flavor snap back into existence. This is why food loses taste when you're sick. A blocked nose isn't just uncomfortable, it shuts down your flavor system. Chefs, food scientists, even perfumers understand this deeply. That's why smell is the secret weapon of taste. Flavor isn't on your tongue, it's in your head, built from a multisensory illusion. Now, imagine how easily your perception of food can be manipulated. A scent in the air, a color on the plate, a texture beneath your teeth. Flavor is a symphony, and if one instrument is missing, the entire song feels wrong. The flavor confusion effect doesn't just change how we eat, it reveals how little of taste actually comes from tasting. What if you saw light, but there was none? Imagine lying still in a lab, your eyes closed, the room completely dark. Then, a powerful magnet rotates near your head. Suddenly, flashes of light burst across your vision, but your eyes are shut. The room is pitch black. There are no screens, no bulbs, no sun. What you're seeing isn't light, it's your brain being tricked. This is the magnetic phosphine effect, a strange and real phenomenon where strong magnetic fields stimulate the visual cortex directly. Phosphines are those little bursts of color or light you sometimes see when you rub your eyes too hard. But magnetic phosphines are different. There's no pressure, no movement. Just the invisible force of a magnetic field crossing through your skull, triggering neurons in the part of your brain that interprets vision. And when those neurons fire, your brain does what it always does. It interprets the signal as light. It doesn't know the difference between reality and suggestion. This phenomenon has been studied in zero-light environments, often during transcranial magnetic stimulation. Subjects report swirls, flashes, arcs. Some see shapes. Some even describe it as watching a distant storm behind closed eyelids. The magnet doesn't touch the eyes. It bypasses them entirely. It's not your vision being activated. It's your sense of vision, fabricated by the brain, forged from electrical whispers. Magnetic phosphines reveal how easily the mind can be deceived. They show that seeing doesn't always require sight. The brain needs only the illusion of a signal, and it will build an image out of nothing. In complete darkness, your mind can still light a match. All it takes is a nudge from an invisible force. And once lit, that phantom spark becomes indistinguishable from real light, at least to the one experiencing it. What if your eyes couldn't agree on what reality looks like? Imagine this. One eye sees a red vertical stripe, the other sees a green horizontal one. You'd think your brain would blend them, maybe into a mesh, but it doesn't. Instead, you experience perceptual rivalry. Your brain flips between the two images, unable to combine them. One moment it's red, the next, green. Never both. This isn't a malfunction. It's how your brain handles conflict it can't resolve. This phenomenon is called binocular rivalry, and it reveals how perception isn't passive. Your brain doesn't just receive data, it decides what wins. When two different images hit your retinas, your visual system competes for dominance. Only one gets full awareness, the other fades. Then, moments later, the roles reverse. And it keeps happening, cycling unpredictably, even though the images never change. Researchers use this effect to study consciousness itself, because you're looking at the same thing. But your experience changes. That shift, that mental switch, is a rare glimpse into how awareness flows. What determines which image wins? Is it brightness, color, focus, emotion? No one knows for sure, but the result is clear. Your sense of reality is fragile, negotiated, a tug-of-war of perception. This is why optical illusions and conflicting cues can feel so unsettling. Your brain hates contradiction, and when it can't choose, it forces a rivalry, not a merger, not a compromise, a war. Now imagine how often your senses might disagree. What you hear versus what you see, what you expect versus what's real. Perceptual rivalry isn't just a lab trick. It's a reminder that your vision of the world is never unanimous. What if perfectly straight lines looked like they were bending away from each other, just because of a trick in the background? Imagine staring at two bold parallel lines. You know they're straight. You measure them, you trace them with your finger, but your eyes insist. They're drifting apart, slanting away, tilting like they're about to escape the frame. This is the Zollner illusion, a visual trap that makes rigid parallel lines appear to diverge, all because of a set of tiny diagonal slashes. The illusion works because of the brain's natural attempt to process angles and depth. Those little slashes across the lines, they're not decoration. They're disruption. Your visual cortex interprets the intersections as cues for perspective. It assumes there's a 3D tilt to the image, like you're viewing a structure in space rather than flat lines on a page. And so, the lines, which are actually parallel, appear to lean away from each other, like warped beams in a collapsing structure. Even when you know it's an illusion, it doesn't go away. Your brain keeps trying to correct for a depth that isn't there. It's like watching a hallway stretch or collapse, depending on the angle you view it from. But here, the hallway doesn't move. Your mind does. The illusion persists because your perception system wasn't built for truth. It was built for efficiency. This illusion isn't just a visual oddity. It demonstrates how strongly your perception relies on context. The brain doesn't just report what it sees. It guesses, corrects, fills in, and edits. It applies logic, expectation, and probability to what should be a simple task. The Zollner illusion reveals a hidden truth. Even when everything is straight, your mind might still see a curve, because reality, through your eyes, is always a filtered construction. You don't just see the world, you interpret it. What if size wasn't a fact, but a feeling your brain constantly recalculates? Imagine looking at two identical circles. One is surrounded by larger circles, the other by smaller ones. The center shapes are exactly the same, but you're convinced one is bigger. That's the Ebbinghaus illusion, a real, measurable glitch in your perception that shows just how easily context can warp your sense of size. This isn't a trick of the eyes, it's a decision made by the brain. Your visual system doesn't interpret objects in isolation. It compares, contrasts, and draws conclusions based on surrounding information. In the Ebbinghaus illusion, your brain assumes the circle next to smaller objects must be larger in comparison, while the one next to bigger shapes appears smaller, even though both are identical. This illusion is so powerful that it affects not only how we see objects, but how we interact with them. In motor control studies, people reach differently for the same sized object depending on the illusion's setup, proving that even action can be deceived by appearance. It's not just what you see, it's how your body reacts to what it sees. And this kind of size distortion appears everywhere, in marketing, food plating, sports visuals, even in how we judge people. Place someone among taller individuals, and they seem shorter. Put them among smaller ones, and they grow, without changing at all. Now imagine how many of your judgments rely on comparisons rather than truth. The Ebbinghaus illusion is more than a visual trick. It's a reminder that context isn't just background, it's the lens through which you define reality. And sometimes, your brain doesn't see what's there, it sees what makes sense. What if movement alone could reveal a shape that isn't otherwise visible? Imagine staring at a blank screen. It looks empty, just a uniform background, but then a simple wand, a vertical bar, starts to move across it. Suddenly a shape appears, outlined not by color or contrast, but by motion. A hidden figure rises out of nothingness, visible only because the wand has moved past it. This is the magic wand effect, a real, scientifically documented illusion, where motion reveals form in the absence of light or edges. Your visual system is remarkably sensitive to changes in space over time. When something moves across a static background, your brain detects differences, not in brightness or color, but in how certain areas respond to movement. Even if the object has no visible outline, the interruption it causes in the pattern of motion is enough to give it shape. Your brain fills in the gaps, assembling a form where none seems to exist. It's like seeing wind only when it blows through trees, or noticing an object in water only because the ripples bend around it. This effect has been studied in labs using moving bars over texture fields, revealing silhouettes that vanish the moment the motion stops. Without movement, the brain loses its edge detection. With movement, the hidden form pulses into view, framed by disruption. The shape is not shown, it's revealed by timing. The magic wand effect proves we don't see with our eyes alone. We see with motion, with change, with contrast over time. Your brain doesn't just look, it listens to how the world shifts, to the friction between stillness and change. And sometimes, those shifts are the only reason you see anything at all. When there is no color, no light, no edges, movement becomes the truth your brain trusts. What if you felt pain in a part of your body that no longer exists? Imagine losing an arm, a leg, a hand, and still feeling it throb, ache, or burn. You try to move fingers that are gone. You feel cramps in a foot that isn't there. This is phantom limb pain, a haunting and very real neurological phenomenon where the brain continues to feel sensations, sometimes excruciating ones, from limbs that have been amputated. This isn't psychological. It's not imagined. It's rooted in the brain's body map, known as the somatosensory cortex. Even after a limb is removed, the brain's representation of that limb remains active. The nerves that once sent signals from the missing limb are still firing. They're just disconnected from the physical body, and the result is confusion, neurological echoes that the brain interprets as real pain. Some patients feel itching they can't scratch. Others report their phantom hand clenched tightly into a fist, stuck in place, causing agony. These sensations aren't just uncomfortable, they can be life-altering. And because the pain feels so real, the brain reacts as if the injury were still present. One groundbreaking therapy uses mirrors. A patient places their existing limb next to a mirror and moves it, tricking the brain into believing the phantom limb is moving too. Over time, this can reduce pain. It's a bizarre but powerful solution to a problem born from a deeper truth. The brain's map of the body isn't always updated when the body changes. Now, imagine how many sensations you think are tied to flesh, but really live in the circuits of perception. Phantom limb pain reveals something profound. Your body ends at the skin, but your experience of it doesn't. It's drawn in the mind, and sometimes that drawing refuses to fade. What if the moment you knew what to hear, everything changed? Imagine listening to a garbled, robotic sound. Beeps, whistles, maybe static. It's meaningless, just noise. But then someone tells you what's being said. You hear the original sentence, and suddenly the garbled version transforms. You can't unhear it. It becomes clear. This is the Sine-Wave speech illusion, a fascinating, scientifically real effect, where your brain turns noise into language the moment it gains context. Sine-Wave speech is created by stripping real speech down to its basic frequencies. No tone, no breath, no natural voice. To an untrained ear, it sounds like nonsense. But play the original sentence first, and something strange happens. When you return to the synthetic version, your brain now fills in the missing detail. What once sounded meaningless now becomes speech, words, language. Your mind rebuilds what isn't there. This illusion has stunned linguists and neuroscientists for decades. It reveals that perception isn't about raw input. It's about interpretation. The same sound, played twice, is heard differently simply because you now expect it to contain meaning. Your auditory cortex reconfigures in real time, rewiring the way it filters and prioritizes information. This illusion is even more startling because once the transformation happens, it becomes nearly irreversible. The Sine-Wave speech illusion proves that understanding doesn't come from hearing alone. It comes from knowing what to hear. Context isn't just helpful, it's transformative. Once your brain knows the pattern, it changes the past. The noise you once ignored becomes a voice you can't forget. It's not your ears that changed. It's your mind's idea of what matters. Perception, once reshaped, reshapes everything that follows. What if you walked into a room you've never seen before and knew exactly what was going to happen? Imagine sitting down with a friend, hearing them say something mundane, and suddenly you feel it. You've lived this moment already. Every detail, the sound, the lighting, the exact words. But logically it's impossible. That feeling is déjà vu. An eerie, split-second certainty that the present is repeating, and it's one of the most mysterious glitches in human consciousness. Scientists believe déjà vu may come from a brief misfire in your brain's memory circuits. Instead of processing the experience as new, your mind accidentally files it as familiar. One theory suggests the brain stores short-term and long-term memories slightly out of sync. If the signals cross, the present gets tagged as a memory, creating a false sense of recollection. You don't remember the moment. You remember remembering it. Another theory is about timing. If one hemisphere of the brain processes an event just milliseconds faster than the other, the delayed signal feels like a repeat. It's a loop, not of time, but of perception. Your brain double books the now. Déjà vu is common, especially in younger people or those under stress. But it's fleeting. The feeling vanishes as fast as it arrives, leaving behind only confusion. And yet, it shakes something deep. It questions the linear nature of time, memory, and how fragile your sense of now truly is. Some researchers have even connected it to microseizures in the temporal lobe, tiny bursts of electrical activity that mimic familiarity without real memory. It's not a paranormal glitch, it's a perceptual hiccup. Brief, involuntary, and unshakably profound. Now, imagine how often your reality might be just slightly misaligned. What if the feeling of having been here before is your brain catching itself in the act of writing the present twice? What if the familiar suddenly became alien? Imagine walking into your home, the same hallway, the same light switch, the same smell of morning coffee, but something feels wrong. You recognize it, but only vaguely. It feels staged, unfamiliar, like a memory copied too many times. You blink, but the sensation deepens. Your own house has become a stranger. This is Jamais Vu, the eerie, real-world twin of Déjà Vu. Instead of feeling like you've seen something before, you feel like you've never seen it at all, even if you live it daily. Unlike Déjà Vu, which tricks you into believing something new is familiar, Jamais Vu flips the script. It makes the routine feel unreal. Say a common word over and over, door, 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 until it dissolves into meaningless sound. That's linguistic Jamais Vu. Your brain, overwhelmed by repetition or stress, detaches meaning from recognition. Familiarity erodes, identity wobbles. You know the thing, but it feels invented. Psychologists have replicated Jamais Vu in labs using words and faces. Soldiers have reported it during battle, drivers during long highway trips. Even writers get it mid-sentence, suddenly unsure if the word they is spelled correctly. The brain, under cognitive fatigue or neurological glitch, fails to confirm what should be obvious. It doesn't forget the thing. It forgets how to feel familiar with it. Jamais Vu is a crack in the lens of perception, a reminder that memory and recognition aren't facts, they're sensations. And when sensation fails, the world becomes strange, not because it changed, but because your brain stopped recognizing the script. You're watching your life play out, but it feels like someone else wrote it. The lines are right, the stage is right, but the meaning? Gone. And in that hollowed-out familiarity, a new kind of disorientation is born. Cold, clinical, and eerily unforgettable. What if your brain couldn't handle randomness and kept inventing patterns to feel in control? Imagine flipping a coin 6 times. You get heads, heads, tails, tails, heads, tails. Seems random, right? Now, flip it again and get 6 heads in a row. That feels wrong, even suspicious, but statistically, both are equally likely. The discomfort you feel is the arithmetic illusion, a deep cognitive bias where our brains distort math, odds, and randomness to make the world feel simpler than it really is. Your brain isn't built for statistics, it's built for survival. And survival favors speed, not accuracy. So, when you see numbers, patterns, or probabilities, your mind simplifies them into narratives. If something happens twice, we expect it to continue. If an outcome feels due, like heads after 5 tails, we assume the odds have changed, but they haven't. That's the gambler's fallacy, born from the same illusion. It gets stranger. In experiments, people asked to generate random sequences tend to avoid long streaks, believing they look too ordered to be random. But true randomness often contains clusters, runs, and streaks. It just doesn't feel random to us. Our minds crave balance, and when balance breaks, we invent logic to explain it, even if it's wrong. This illusion affects more than games. It alters how we judge risk, probability, and fairness. We overestimate rare events if they're emotional, like plane crashes, and underestimate constant dangers like heart disease. Even when shown the math, we resist it. The arithmetic illusion isn't about intelligence, it's about instinct. Now, imagine how many decisions you've made based not on logic, but on patterns your brain desperately wanted to see. The numbers didn't lie, but your mind, in trying to make sense of chaos, told you a story, and you believed it. What if meaning could dissolve right in front of you? Imagine sitting alone, staring at a single word, any word. Chair, you say it once, then again. Chair, then again. Chair, chair, chair. And suddenly it happens. The word breaks. It sounds foreign, empty, like a noise disconnected from language. You know what it means, but you can't feel it anymore. This is semantic satiation, a real, scientifically studied effect where repetition causes language to collapse inside your brain. The phenomenon occurs when a word is repeated so many times in quick succession that the neurons responsible for processing its meaning become temporarily desensitized. It's not that the word changes, it's that your ability to associate meaning with it drops. your brain short-circuits its own comprehension. What was once a symbol becomes a sound. What had depth becomes flat. This is cognitive fatigue, but specific to semantics. Your brain recognizes the form, but loses access to the concept. Linguists and psychologists have used semantic satiation to study how we process language. Say apple 30 times, and suddenly it doesn't feel like fruit anymore. It feels like gibberish. Or say your own name, again and again, until it too becomes abstract, a label that no longer belongs to you. This reveals just how delicate meaning really is. Words don't carry power on their own. Their meaning is regenerated, moment by moment, by our minds, and repetition strips that mechanism down to its bones. Semantic satiation proves that language is not permanent, it's performance, a fluid contract between sound and thought. And when you push it too far, the performance glitches. You stare at a word and lose it. Not because you forgot it, but because your brain, overwhelmed by recognition, stopped believing it was real. In that moment, language collapses not from confusion, but from overuse. Meaning fades into static. Familiarity dissolves into noise. What if your brain adjusted your voice without asking for permission? Imagine talking to someone in a quiet cafe. Your voice is calm, soft, effortless. Now picture that same conversation in a loud bar or on a busy street. Suddenly, without thinking, you're speaking louder, sharper, more forcefully. You didn't plan it. You didn't notice. That's the Lombard effect, a real neurological phenomenon where your brain boosts your vocal output to overcome background noise. It's not just volume. You change pitch, speed, tone, everything shifts in real time. Your brain constantly monitors the sound environment and modulates your speech to stay audible. This happens automatically, deep in the auditory motor loop. It's a survival reflex. In noisy environments, communication must fight to be heard. So, your body adapts, fast. This effect was first observed in 1909 by Etienne Lombard, who noticed patients speaking louder when background noise was introduced. Since then, studies have shown that even babies, animals, and artificial voice systems exhibit versions of this reflex. It's hardwired. But it has deeper implications. In group settings, your voice may rise not just to be heard, but to assert presence. In arguments, rising volume might not be emotional. It could be involuntary. The brain doesn't just manage your message. It edits the delivery based on the surrounding chaos. And the moment the noise drops, your voice softens again, without you realizing. That's the Lombard effect in motion, real-time, unconscious compensation that reveals how tightly linked our perception is to expression. Now, imagine how much of your communication isn't really under your control. What if half the things you say are shaped not by thought, but by noise your brain refuses to ignore? What if reality was always one step ahead, or behind your brain? Imagine watching a dot move smoothly across a screen. Suddenly, a second dot flashes right next to it. They're aligned, perfectly synchronized in time and space. But that's not what you see. The flash appears behind the moving object, as if it's lagging behind. This is the flash lag illusion, a real, scientifically studied phenomenon where your brain, trying to predict motion, rewrites what you see. The illusion seems simple, but what it reveals is profound. Your brain isn't a camera. It doesn't capture the world in real time. Instead, it predicts where moving objects should be based on their speed and direction. It's a survival trick. Motion prediction helps you track prey, dodge danger, and keep pace in a moving world. But this trick comes with a cost. It sometimes fabricates the present. When a stationary flash appears next to a moving object, your brain updates the location of the moving object but doesn't adjust the flash. So it looks like the flash came late, even though it didn't. This happens even when the flash and the object are programmed to occur at the exact same moment. The illusion persists, whether the object moves in a straight line or a circle, because the brain is overcorrecting for what it thinks is about to happen. Experiments have shown that this illusion resists training. Even when subjects are told in advance that the two objects are perfectly aligned, they still perceive the flash as lagging behind. It's as if the brain refuses to believe what the eyes are showing it. The flash lag illusion proves you never see the world as it is. You see what your brain expects it to be. And when expectation and reality collide, prediction wins. Vision is not passive. It's a simulation, updated on the fly. Every moment you see is a guess dressed up as certainty. And sometimes, even a perfectly timed flash gets left behind. What if your brain filled in the blanks so convincingly you saw things that weren't even there? Imagine looking at 3 Pac-Man shapes arranged just right. Suddenly, a perfect white triangle appears, floating above them, sharp-edged and solid. But here's the twist. That triangle doesn't exist. No outline, no borders, no shading. Your brain invented it. That's the Knizia triangle, and it's one of the most iconic examples of illusory contours. Edges and shapes your mind constructs from suggestion alone. This isn't a mistake. It's a feature of human perception. Your brain constantly stitches together incomplete data to create a coherent world. When it detects familiar patterns or geometric alignment, it fills in missing parts automatically. In the case of illusory contours, your mind sees lines where none exist, because it prefers structure over chaos. The Knizia triangle was named after Italian psychologist Gaetano Canizia, who studied how the brain perceives depth, shape, and boundaries. What's astonishing is that this illusion doesn't just fool your conscious mind. It activates the same neurons in the visual cortex that respond to actual lines. Your brain treats the illusion as real, as though it's detecting a true edge in the physical world. This effect plays out in everyday life. You see roads continuing behind cars, figures hidden in fog, patterns in architecture that imply forms. The brain's tendency to invent edges helps you navigate a fragmented world, but it also shows how easy it is to be tricked by what's not there. Now, imagine how much of what you see is actually what your brain assumes should be there. The Knizia triangle isn't just an optical illusion. It's a glimpse into a visual system designed not to report truth, but to complete the story, even if the story is a lie. What if repetition didn't lead to clarity, but to distortion? Imagine listening to the same word over and over. Life, life, life. At first, it's normal, but then something strange happens. The word begins to change. You hear light or wife or even fight. The original word is still being played, perfectly looped, but your brain starts replacing it. This is the verbal transformation effect, a strange, scientifically documented phenomenon where repeated words morph into entirely different ones, even though the sound never changes. This isn't a trick in the sound, it's a glitch in your brain. When your auditory system is flooded with repetition, your neurons adapt. They become less sensitive to the unchanged stimulus, and your brain starts grasping for variation. It invents change, conjuring new words that were never spoken. You hear patterns and noise. You construct meaning from monotony. Your perception, desperate for something new, manufactures it, like the mind refusing to stare at still water. Researchers have used this effect to explore how we interpret speech and noise, how accents are perceived, and how the brain uses context to create language. Even when no real change occurs, the brain insists on evolution. It edits the input to keep your attention alive. Over time, the original word may disappear completely, replaced by phantom phrases your ears never actually heard. The verbal transformation effect reveals something profound about speech perception. You don't just hear language, you participate in it. The act of listening is a collaboration between signal and expectation. And when the signal stays still, the mind moves. In that movement, meaning is bent, broken, and reimagined, not by the world, but by you. Your brain, in its hunger for novelty, turns order into chaos, until the chaos feels like sense again. What if your body believed a lie your brain knew wasn't true? Imagine putting on a virtual reality headset and finding yourself standing on the edge of a skyscraper. You know it's fake. You're in your living room, there's no wind, no real danger, and yet, your legs lock, your heart pounds. You can't take the step forward. That's place illusion, a powerful cognitive effect where your sense of physical presence overrides rational thought. In virtual reality, the environment doesn't have to be real. It just has to feel real, and your brain is surprisingly easy to convince. The illusion of being somewhere else isn't created by photorealistic graphics or high resolution. It's driven by synchrony. Your head turns, the world moves with it, you look down, and the floor drops away. The feedback loop between body and environment creates presence, and once presence takes over, logic takes a back seat. Researchers have found that place illusion can provoke real fear responses. Subjects standing on fake ledges sweat, tremble, and refuse to move. Others avoid stepping through virtual glass floors, even when begged to try. The brain knows it's an illusion, but the body acts like it's facing death. This effect is used in therapy to treat phobias, PTSD, and anxiety. VR allows people to confront fear in a controlled setting, where their mind learns to separate danger from perception, but it also raises ethical questions. How real does something have to feel before the brain treats it as real? Now, imagine how easily your surroundings can hijack your instincts. Place illusion isn't just about VR. It's about the delicate threshold between what we think is real and what we feel is real. And when the body speaks louder than reason, even fiction becomes truth. What if you felt yourself moving, but your body never moved at all? Imagine sitting perfectly still in a massive IMAX theater. The film begins. The screen shows a rapid descent through a canyon or a dive into the clouds. Your body is motionless, but your stomach drops. You sway slightly. You grab your seat. This isn't imagination. This is the Vection illusion, a scientifically proven effect where visual motion tricks your body into feeling like it's in motion too. Your sense of movement isn't just built from what your muscles or inner ears tell you. It's a combination of inputs: vision, balance, orientation, and context. When the visual field around you moves rapidly, your brain believes you must be the one moving. Why else would the whole world shift? The mismatch between visual data and bodily sensation causes your brain to reconcile the conflict, and the result is a false sense of motion. Pilots and simulators experience this. Gamers and VR setups feel it. Even looking out the window of a stationary train, if the train next to you starts to move first, your body panics for a second, convinced it's you who's leaving the station. That moment of disorientation, that's Vection in action. Scientists use Vection to study spatial orientation, vestibular function, and multisensory integration. The illusion reveals how easily motion perception can be hacked. It shows that movement is not just physical, it's perceptual. And sometimes, the eyes overpower everything else. The Vection illusion reminds us that motion isn't just about muscles or velocity. It's about belief. When the world around you moves, your brain follows. And even if your body stays still, your mind may already be falling. What if your senses quietly stopped reporting the truth, just because they got bored? Imagine stepping into a hot shower. At first, the water burns, but a minute later, it feels warm, comfortable. Did the temperature change? No. Your brain simply stopped reacting. That's the adaptation illusion, a powerful and invisible process where constant stimuli fade from awareness, not because they go away, but because your brain tunes them out. Your senses are designed for change, not constancy. When exposed to unchanging input, like the hum of a fan, the pressure of your clothes, or the light in a room, your neurons fire less and less until they stop signaling entirely. This process, called sensory adaptation, helps your brain focus on what's new, different, or potentially dangerous. It's efficient, but it also means you're constantly losing pieces of reality. This happens in every sense. A strong scent vanishes after a few minutes. A bright light dims in perception. Even pain can dull when it's steady. Visual adaptation leads to stunning illusions. Stare at a waterfall, then look at static rocks. They appear to drift upward. That's your visual system recalibrating motion. Your brain isn't lying, it's economizing. But this illusion has side effects. It explains why people become noseblind to their own homes, why you stop feeling your wedding ring, why music can feel quieter the longer it plays. Adaptation is the brain's background editor, silencing what no longer matters, until it suddenly does. Now, imagine how much you've stopped noticing. What sensations faded not because they disappeared, but because your mind dismissed them. The adaptation illusion reveals that perception isn't passive, it's filtered. And sometimes, what you fail to feel is exactly what you should be paying attention to. What if you saw yourself standing across the room when you knew you hadn't moved? Imagine a moment of extreme fear, trauma, or neurological chaos. Suddenly, you're no longer inside your body. You're above it, or beside it, watching yourself from the outside, like a phantom reflection no mirror could explain. This is the autoscopic illusion, a rare, real, and scientifically recorded phenomenon where the brain splits perception and self into two. People who've experienced it describe it as terrifying, surreal, or eerily peaceful. They say, "I saw myself lying there," or "I was hovering above my body." These are not dreams, nor are they hallucinations in the traditional sense. Autoscopic illusions are disruptions in multisensory integration, where the brain momentarily loses track of where you are. This illusion is often reported during severe trauma, epileptic seizures, or moments of near death. Neuroscientists believe it originates in the temporoparietal junction, a brain region responsible for body awareness and spatial orientation. When this area misfires, the boundary between self and space collapses. You still see, you still process, but you no longer feel anchored. Some patients report seeing their double perform movements seconds before they do, like watching a ghosted version of themselves in delay. Others feel split, simultaneously occupying two spaces. These experiences can last seconds or stretch into minutes, and for many, they alter the sense of self permanently. The autoscopic illusion isn't just a strange side effect. It's a window into the fragile link between vision, identity, and presence. It reminds us that even our most intimate perspective, the view from within, is something the brain constructs. And sometimes, that construction fractures, revealing a world where you are both the observer and the observed. What if your brain woke up in terror, while your body stayed frozen in sleep? Imagine opening your eyes in the middle of the night. You can't move. You can't speak, and in the corner of the room, there's someone standing there, a tall, dark figure, faceless, still, watching. Your heart races. You try to scream, but nothing comes out. This is the shadow person illusion, a terrifying and scientifically real experience, most commonly linked to sleep paralysis. Sleep paralysis occurs when your brain wakes from REM sleep, but your body remains immobilized, a normal function to prevent you from acting out dreams. But in this liminal state, your brain is caught between two worlds, awake and dreaming. The result is a deeply vivid hallucination, layered over real perception. And because the brain's fear circuits activate faster than reason, the hallucination is often a figure, something unknown, dangerous, and close. People all over the world describe the same thing. A black silhouette, often male, sometimes wearing a hat or cloak. It doesn't speak, it doesn't move, but its presence is crushing. The illusion can feel so real that even after the episode ends, people are afraid to sleep again. For centuries, these entities were blamed on demons, spirits, or supernatural attacks. But science offers another explanation, an ancient survival mechanism gone haywire. Your brain evolved to detect threats in darkness. When deprived of motor control and flooded with fear, it fills the void with something to fear. That something becomes a shadow, a person, an invader. Now imagine how many ancient fears were born from half-sleep. The shadow person illusion doesn't just haunt the edge of night, it proves that even in modern brains, old ghosts still know how to get in. What if the hardest tasks for humans are the easiest for machines, and the easiest for us are the hardest for them? Imagine asking a supercomputer to solve calculus equations, analyze complex data, or win a chess match. It does it instantly, flawlessly. But ask it to walk into a room, recognize a face, pick up a glass, or understand a joke, and suddenly, it struggles. This is Moravec's paradox, a real, documented phenomenon in artificial intelligence that reveals how our deepest intuitions are also the most difficult for machines to grasp. Named after roboticist Hans Moravec, this paradox highlights a strange inversion in AI development. High-level reasoning, once thought difficult, turns out to be simple to program. But low-level perception and mobility, things toddlers do with ease, remain deeply complex. Computers can beat grandmasters at chess, but can't reliably tell a chair from a shadow. Why? Because logic and math are relatively new inventions, refined through structured systems. But perception, motion, emotion, these evolved over millions of years. They're buried deep in the subconscious layers of biology, encoded not in rules, but in experience. To replicate them in code is to replicate the messy chaos of life itself. Modern AI systems use neural networks and vast data sets to approximate these skills. But even today, basic tasks like folding laundry or walking on uneven ground remain monumental challenges for robots. They require real-time adaptation, sensory integration, and a fluid sense of self within space. Moravec's paradox reminds us that true intelligence isn't found in solving puzzles. It's in navigating the world effortlessly. And what humans take for granted, sight, touch, intuition, isn't primitive. It's profoundly complex. So much so that, in the realm of AI, it remains the final frontier. What if your brain would rather rewrite reality than admit it was wrong? Imagine convincing yourself that smoking isn't that dangerous because you smoke, or justifying a bad relationship by saying, at least they care, because leaving feels harder. That mental twist, that subtle rewriting of belief to match behavior, is cognitive dissonance, a scientifically studied phenomenon where your brain bends logic to avoid the pain of internal conflict. At its core, cognitive dissonance is about psychological discomfort. When your actions and beliefs don't align, your brain feels friction, so it adjusts one or the other. If you lie but believe you're honest, the tension forces a shift. You'll either admit you're not as honest as you thought, or convince yourself it wasn't really a lie. The story changes not because it's true, but because it has to fit. This illusion plays out everywhere. People who suffer for something, like enduring harsh training or waiting in long lines, end up valuing it more. That's not coincidence. That's dissonance resolution. Your brain says, if I work this hard, it must be worth it. It's also why cults work, why sunk cost fallacies happen, and why we justify choices after we make them, even when new evidence says we were wrong. In one famous study, participants were paid either $1 or $20 to lie about how fun a boring task was. Surprisingly, those paid $1 were more likely to claim it was enjoyable. Why? Because they had less external justification, so their minds adjusted the belief instead. That's how powerful the need for inner harmony can be. Now, imagine how many of your beliefs were shaped not by truth, but by the quiet need to feel consistent. Cognitive dissonance doesn't just twist logic, it edits identity, one small compromise at a time. What if your body had a secret language, and it spoke even when you didn't know it? Imagine sitting across from someone during a conversation. They smile. A few seconds later, you do too. They cross their arms, and minutes later, so do you. You shift when they shift, tilt your head when they do, and mirror their tone of voice. Not because you choose to, but because your brain is wired to connect. This is the chameleon effect, a real, scientifically documented phenomenon where we unconsciously mimic the behavior of those around us. It's not deception. It's bonding. This subtle mimicry happens in facial expressions, posture, gestures, even speech patterns. It's your nervous system trying to create social harmony, like emotional Wi-Fi between people. And the more we mirror, the more the other person tends to like us. It builds trust, increases empathy, makes strangers feel familiar. But it happens below awareness. You're not acting. It's instinct, an ancient reflex wired into our mirror neuron systems. Researchers discovered that even small, unconscious gestures, like rubbing your face or nodding your head, get mirrored within seconds during real conversations. And this mirroring doesn't just reflect connection. It helps build it. It's seen in children, adults, and even across cultural lines. Waiters who subtly mimic their customers' words or body language earn higher tips. People in interviews who subtly copy their interviewer's posture are rated more positively. The chameleon effect proves that connection isn't just verbal, it's embodied. You don't just listen to people, you become them, piece by piece, moment by moment. And through this mimicry, social bonds form faster, smoother, deeper. It's not manipulation, it's empathy in motion. And sometimes, the truest parts of a conversation happen between the words, when your body speaks in sync with someone else's. What if your brain heard meaning where there was none, just to fill the silence? Imagine listening to static, wind, or white noise, and suddenly you think you hear a whisper, a voice, a message, or play a song backward and swear it says something dark, something secret. That's auditory pareidolia, a strange and real psychological effect, where your brain forces structure onto randomness, hearing words and sound that never contained any. This phenomenon is similar to seeing faces in clouds or shapes in shadows. It's your brain's pattern-seeking algorithm, running on overdrive. When exposed to chaotic or unstructured noise, your auditory system tries to decode it anyway. Because biologically, it's safer to assume there might be meaning, to hear danger or language, than to miss something important. So you hear what isn't there. And once you expect it, your brain supplies the illusion. People have reported hearing full sentences in fan noise, hearing "help me" in a water faucet, or deciphering ghostly messages from reversed tracks. The moment someone tells you what to listen for, your brain locks onto it. From that point, it's impossible to unhear. This is called priming, Your expectations shape perception, and soon you're not just hearing the noise, you're translating it. Auditory pareidolia plays into conspiracy theories, haunted house legends, even religious visions. It's powerful because it feels personal, but it's not the universe speaking. It's your mind projecting order onto chaos. Now imagine how many sounds you've believed in, simply because your brain refused to accept silence. Auditory pareidolia isn't about hearing ghosts or gods. It's about how deeply wired we are to find meaning, even when there's only noise. What if your eyes change the way they see color? Not just over years, but over minutes. Imagine walking outside during the golden hour. As the sun dips below the horizon, colors begin to shift. Reds and yellows that once seemed vibrant now look muted. But blues? They glow. They become more vivid, more intense. You haven't changed your clothes. The sky hasn't changed its spectrum. But your vision has. This is the Purkinje effect, a scientifically documented phenomenon where your color sensitivity shifts with the light. Named after Czech anatomist John Evangelista Purkina, the effect reveals a transition in how your eyes respond to light. In daylight, your cones, the color-sensitive cells in your retina, handle most of the work. They're great at detecting warm colors like red and yellow. But as light fades, your rods, cells more sensitive to low light, take over. And rods are tuned to blue-green wavelengths. That's why cooler tones become more intense as darkness sets in. This isn't a trick of memory, it's biology. The Purkinje effect is why twilight feels cooler, not just in temperature, but in mood. Artists, filmmakers, and designers use this shift to create emotion. A red flower in the morning looks bold. At dusk, it fades into shadow. Meanwhile, the same blue shirt that looked dull at noon now feels electric. Your eyes, evolving from day to night, are silently rewriting your visual world. It's a reminder that perception isn't fixed, it's fluid. Your visual system adapts to your environment, moment by moment, rewiring itself to prioritize survival. Our ancestors used this adaptation to better detect threats as darkness approached. And sometimes, those changes make the world feel magical. The colors you see aren't just light, they're time itself, painted across your retina. In every fading sunset, your eyes tell a different story, one where color is emotion and darkness is transformation. What if the surface of the moon could shift shape right before your eyes, without changing at all? Imagine staring at a photo of a lunar crater. At first, it looks like a dent, concave, like a bowl in the moon's surface. But then, as you rotate the image or change the lighting direction, it suddenly appears to bulge outward. It flips from a pit to a bump. That's the crater illusion, a powerful demonstration of how fragile and easily fooled your brain's depth perception system really is. Your brain relies on shadows to decode shape. It assumes that light comes from above, like the sun or your overhead lights. So when shadows fall in an unexpected direction, your brain misinterprets them. A crater can look like a dome, and a hill can appear to sink. Nothing physically changes. The pixels are identical, but your brain makes a snap judgment, and sometimes it guesses wrong. This illusion is especially strong in satellite imagery or photos taken in space. Without familiar Earth-like cues, like trees, water, or atmospheric haze, your visual system struggles. It wants to see depth, to make sense of light and shadow. But in that struggle, it invents a reality that feels true, even if it's backward. The crater illusion isn't just a curiosity. It highlights a flaw in how we perceive three-dimensional space from two-dimensional images. Your eyes don't see depth. They infer it. And that inference is vulnerable to lighting tricks. Now, imagine how many of your perceptions are based on invisible assumptions, rules your brain never questions. The crater illusion shows that even the surface of the moon can lie to you. Not through deception, but through your own brain's desperate need to believe in shape and shadow. What if the smaller the space, the deeper the truth? Imagine standing in a narrow phone booth. There's barely enough room to move. You're surrounded by walls, cut off from the outside world. Yet somehow, you feel more open. You start talking. And before you realize it, you've shared something private, something raw, something you wouldn't say out loud in a wide, open room. This is the phone booth effect, a psychological phenomenon where cramped spaces and partial anonymity trigger surprising self-disclosure. It's counterintuitive. You'd think tight spaces would make us withdraw, but in practice, they often encourage confessions. Psychologists have studied how elevators, cars, confession booths, and even airplane seats become emotional incubators. In these confined zones, our brains interpret the environment as safe from judgment, even if someone is listening on the other end. Part of it is detachment. When you don't see the listener, or when you feel physically separated from the world, your mind lowers its social guard. Another factor is focus. Without visual distractions, attention turns inward. Combine that with the illusion of privacy, and the barriers begin to fall. People say too much in phone booths, on hotlines, in taxis, because the setting suspends the usual rules of social restraint. The phone booth effect reveals how space alters vulnerability. It shows that openness isn't always about freedom, it's about containment. When the world shrinks, so do your defenses. And sometimes, the tightest spaces create the widest confessions. Words that hide in crowds come rushing out in silence, behind glass, into wire. The smaller the space, the louder the truth. In that quiet echo chamber, the voice feels protected yet magnified. And for a moment, disclosure becomes instinct, not intention. What if your body could feel motion when nothing is actually moving at all? Imagine stepping into an elevator. It's completely still, but for a moment, your stomach drops. You feel a surge, like you're rising or falling. Then nothing. That strange, fleeting sensation is the elevator illusion, a powerful trick played by your own sensory system. It's not malfunction, it's anticipation. Your inner ear contains tiny fluid-filled canals and structures that detect acceleration, gravity, and balance. This vestibular system constantly communicates with your brain to track movement, but elevators disrupt that conversation. They move quickly, vertically, and often without warning. And even when still, your brain predicts motion based on past experience. The floor beneath you, the tension in your legs, the hum of machinery, all combine into a subtle expectation of movement. Sometimes, your brain jumps the gun. You feel the shift before it happens, or even when it never does. That's the illusion. Not motion itself, but the brain's interpretation of readiness for motion. It's so strong that people have reported the sensation of floating or falling in completely stopped elevators, especially after long or fast rides. This phenomenon is tied to other motion illusions too, like seasickness, phantom vibrations, and the feeling of continued movement after stepping off a treadmill. Your body expects certain sensations, and when they're missing or delayed, the brain improvises. Now, imagine how often your senses lie to fill a gap in expectation. The elevator illusion reveals something subtle but powerful. Sometimes, your brain doesn't wait for evidence. It feels what it thinks should happen. And in that moment, even stillness can move you. What if your dreams weren't just yours? Imagine waking up from a vivid dream. You're standing in a forest you've never seen, walking through a city you've never visited, speaking a language you've never learned. Yet, it all feels familiar, not imagined, remembered. This is the core of genetic memory theory, a controversial but captivating idea that some of our deepest memories don't come from personal experience, but from the lives of our ancestors. In biology, we know that physical traits pass through DNA, but some scientists and philosophers have asked, could experiences, trauma, fear, knowledge, leave impressions deep enough to pass down too? Animal studies have shown that mice conditioned to fear a specific scent gave birth to offspring who feared the same scent, despite never having encountered it before. Something was inherited. But it wasn't genetic code. It was emotional memory, embedded in the nervous system. Human parallels are harder to prove. But then consider phobias with no source. Déjà vu in unfamiliar countries. Talents that emerge without training. Are these evidence of genetic echoes? Some theories suggest that epigenetic tags, chemical markers left on DNA by life events, could trigger neural structures in future generations, influencing perception, instinct, and even dreams. Critics argue these ideas stretch beyond the bounds of science, but the mystery remains. Why do so many people feel haunted by places they've never been? Why do certain stories, myths, or landscapes feel like home? Genetic memory theory doesn't claim that we live the lives of our ancestors, but it asks whether they left more behind than genes. Maybe memory, too, survives in the code, not like a movie, but like a whisper. A dream stitched into the folds of the mind, waiting for darkness to bring it to light. What if the reason you can't relax isn't stress, but your brain refusing to let go of an unfinished task? Imagine closing your laptop at the end of a workday, but your mind keeps drifting back to that one email you didn't send, or lying in bed replaying that thing you forgot to say. That mental itch is the Zeigarnik effect, a cognitive phenomenon where your brain fixates on incomplete tasks far more than ones you've finished. Named after psychologist Bluma Zeigarnik, the effect was first discovered when she noticed that waiters remembered unpaid orders better than completed ones. Once the order was paid, the memory faded. But as long as something was left open, the mind kept looping back, holding space for resolution. Your brain is wired for closure. It treats unfinished tasks like threats to stability, creating a low-level tension that demands completion. This is why cliffhangers work in TV shows, why unanswered questions in conversations bother us, why to-do lists are both helpful and mentally exhausting. Until the loop is closed, your brain keeps the task in a state of mental priority. This effect isn't just psychological. It influences productivity, focus, and even dreams. Unfinished thoughts can sneak into your sleep, echo during downtime, and cause persistent anxiety. But it's not always bad. It can drive motivation, keep goals alive, and push you to finish what you start. Even writers, artists, and creators experience it. A single incomplete sentence, a melody unresolved, or a sketch abandoned can linger in the mind like an open wound, whispering to be finished. That pull isn't weakness, it's design. Now imagine how much mental space is being held hostage by your own unfinished loops. The Zeigarnik effect isn't about forgetfulness, it's about a brain that refuses to forget. Not until the loop is closed, not until the story ends. And sometimes, the only way to find peace is to finish. What if part of what you see doesn't actually exist? Imagine staring at the world around you. Everything feels seamless, continuous, but hidden within your vision is a hole, a blind spot where your optic nerve meets the retina. It has no photoreceptors. It doesn't transmit any visual information, and yet, you've never noticed it. Why? Because your brain fills it in. This is blind spot filling, a real, scientifically confirmed illusion where your brain fabricates part of your visual world. Everyone has a blind spot in each eye, roughly 15 degrees to the side of center. It's a black hole of vision, but you don't see a black patch. Instead, your brain guesses what should be there, based on the surrounding textures, colors, and patterns. It constructs a believable lie, and that lie becomes your truth. You can test it yourself. Close one eye and focus the other on a specific point while placing a small object, like your thumb, in the blind spot. It disappears, not because it fades or dims, but because your brain erases it entirely, replacing it with background. This process is not an error, it's a feature. Your brain doesn't want visual gaps, so it invents continuity, and it does this constantly, not just in your blind spot, but during eye movements, blinks, and moments of distraction. Vision isn't a camera feed, it's a simulation. Blind spot filling reveals a core truth about perception. Seeing is not passive, it's active. Your brain isn't just recording, it's editing. It cuts, splices, imagines, and reconstructs. What you see is a stitched-together story, sculpted from fragments. And somewhere in that tapestry, you're looking directly at nothing and believing in something. It does this so well, in fact, that most people go their entire lives without realizing it's happening. What if a simple mirror could cure a pain that isn't even real, or at least not physically? Imagine losing a limb yet still feeling it twitch, burn, or clench uncontrollably. You look down and see nothing, but the pain is overwhelming. This is phantom limb pain. And one of the most surprisingly effective treatments doesn't involve surgery or drugs. It uses a mirror. That's mirror box therapy, a method that tricks the brain into healing itself. Invented by neuroscientist Vilayanur Ramachandran, the therapy uses a simple box with a mirror down the center. The patient places their intact limb on one side, and the mirror reflects it, creating the illusion of two healthy limbs. Then, as they move their real limb, their brain sees the phantom one moving too. And somehow, that illusion can relieve pain, unclench imaginary muscles, and even erase sensations that have haunted people for years. The power of this therapy lies in how the brain processes body maps. Even after a limb is gone, its representation in the brain remains, and can become distorted, confused, or frozen. Mirror feedback creates new neural signals that convince the brain the missing limb is there and functional. It updates the map, and the pain starts to fade. Studies have shown promising results, especially in patients with painful phantom sensations. Some describe instant relief. Others need repeated sessions. But the effect is real, and it highlights how perception, not just biology, shapes experience. It's more than a trick. It's a conversation between vision and sensation, a negotiation between mind and body. And for many, it's the first peace they've felt in years. Now, imagine how much of your body isn't physical, but mental. Mirror box. Therapy doesn't heal the limb, it heals the map. And sometimes, seeing is not just believing, it's releasing. What if your brain could understand a message you never consciously heard? Imagine playing a song backward. It's garbled noise, nonsense, until suddenly you hear a phrase, a whisper, a command. Maybe it says, "Serve the devil," or "Buy more now." Did the artist put it there? Did your mind invent it? This is backward masking, a real and controversial phenomenon where hidden messages embedded in reverse audio may be processed by your subconscious, even if your conscious mind doesn't recognize them. Backward masking became infamous in the 1970s and 80s, when rock music was accused of hiding satanic or subliminal content. Songs played in reverse were said to contain secret phrases, calls to rebellion, violence, or blind consumerism. Most of it was debunked as hysteria. But a deeper psychological mystery remained. Can the unconscious mind really detect and decode reversed audio? Studies in psychoacoustics suggest that our auditory system is more sensitive than we think. While the conscious mind dismisses backward phrases as nonsense, the subconscious may still extract emotional tone, rhythm, or intention. Some experiments have shown altered mood or behavior after exposure to masked audio, even if subjects weren't aware of what they heard. Whether deliberate or accidental, backward masking reveals how porous the mind is, how much we absorb without realizing, how sound can slip beneath awareness and settle into emotion. The human brain constantly seeks patterns, even in chaos, and when it finds one, even in reverse, it can respond as if it were real. Backward masking isn't about hearing voices. It's about the possibility that you don't need to hear something forward for it to reach you, that the mind listens both ways, catching echoes even when you're not listening. What if looking into a mirror didn't stop at your reflection, but pulled you into infinity? Imagine standing between two mirrors, one in front of you and one behind. You see yourself, again and again and again, stretching into a tunnel that never ends. Each image contains another version of you, getting smaller, blurrier, vanishing into the dark. That's the illusion of infinite regression, a real optical phenomenon that pushes the limits of visual perception and cognitive stability. This happens when two reflective surfaces face each other. Light bounces back and forth infinitely, and your brain tries to process each echo of your reflection as a separate image. But your visual system wasn't built to track infinity. Instead, it blurs the repetition into a hypnotic corridor. You know it's not real, but it feels vast, deep, almost unnerving. Artists and filmmakers use infinite mirrors to suggest consciousness folding in on itself. Think of recursive dreams, time loops, or characters trapped in their own minds. There's something psychologically eerie about repetition without end. It's more than seeing the same image. It's seeing awareness itself bounce in a feedback loop, a mirror watching a mirror, a mind observing itself. This illusion isn't just visual. It taps into a deeper philosophical fear, the fear of recursion, of questions with no final answer, of thoughts that eat themselves. Like asking, what's the meaning of meaning? Or thinking about thinking until your mind spirals inward. Infinite regression is the moment when perception collapses into echo, and you realize some paths don't lead forward, they fold back. Now, imagine how often your thoughts loop the same way. Mirrors within mirrors, memories of memories. Sometimes the scariest place isn't what you see in the mirror, it's how far that mirror might go. What if the loudest sound in the room was coming from inside you? Imagine sitting quietly, yet feeling your chest thump. Hard, rhythmic, inescapable. You start to notice it more. With each passing second, your heartbeat feels louder, heavier, like it's echoing in your ears, but no one else hears it. There's no real sound, just sensation amplified into awareness. This is the cardiac illusion, a real, scientifically studied phenomenon where your brain turns internal signals into heightened sensory experience. When you're anxious or stressed, your interoception, the brain's perception of the body's internal state, goes into overdrive. The heart is the most noticeable signal, and when your brain locks onto it, it feels like it's growing louder, faster, even shaking the room. Your heart doesn't actually make more noise, it just demands more of your mind's attention. This illusion is common in panic attacks, public speaking, and trauma responses. It's part of the feedback loop between mind and body. The more you notice your heart, the more anxious you become, and the more anxious you become, the more intensely you perceive your heart. Researchers have studied this effect using stethoscope illusions, biofeedback, and sound manipulation. Participants exposed to amplified or imagined heartbeats often report increased emotional distress, even when the sound is fake. It's not just the beat, it's what it symbolizes: fear, vulnerability, life itself pounding through your chest. The cardiac illusion reminds us that perception isn't limited to the outside world. Sometimes, the loudest illusions come from within, and in those moments, your body becomes the speaker, and your brain is the amplifier, turning internal rhythm into external reality. What if the color red didn't just catch your eye, but made your tongue taste cinnamon? Imagine seeing a shade of blue and suddenly tasting mint, or watching a painting and feeling a flavor spread across your mouth. For a small number of people, this isn't imagination, it's reality. It's called color taste synesthesia, a rare and fascinating neurological phenomenon where color and taste are fused through involuntary sensory crossover. Synesthesia occurs when stimulation in one sensory pathway triggers an automatic response in another. In this case, seeing color evokes taste. These aren't metaphors or exaggerations. They're real experiences, consistent and repeatable. A person with this form of synesthesia might say green tastes like lime, or black tastes bitter, even when there's nothing on their tongue. The connection doesn't change over time. It becomes a permanent part of their perception. Scientists believe synesthesia is caused by cross-activation between neighboring areas of the brain, specifically regions responsible for visual processing and gustatory response. In most people, these pathways are separate, but in synesthetes, they may be more interconnected or less inhibited, allowing sensory leakage that translates sight into taste. This blending of senses can be beautiful or overwhelming. Imagine eating a colorful meal and tasting too much, or walking into a bright room and having an unexpected flavor flood your mouth. Yet, many synesthetes describe their condition as a gift, a richer, more layered way to experience the world. Now, imagine if your brain's boundaries weren't so rigid. If every sense could leak into another, color taste. Synesthesia isn't just about mixing sight and taste. It's a glimpse into how flexible and strange our perception can be when the brain decides to rewrite the rules. What if the world didn't change, but your mind convinced you it did? Imagine hearing a new word for the first time, something obscure like Baader-Meinhof. It feels unfamiliar, but within hours, you hear it again. Then you see it in a book. Then, on a sign. Suddenly it feels like this word is everywhere. Has the universe aligned to show you something? Not quite. This is the frequency illusion, also known as the Baader-Meinhof phenomenon, a cognitive trick where something newly noticed seems to appear constantly. It begins with selective attention. Your brain learns something new and marks it as important. Once flagged, your perception sharpens. You start noticing it. Not because it's appearing more often, but because you're finally tuned in. The thing was always there. Now your brain filters for it. The second layer is confirmation bias. You notice each appearance, but forget all the moments you didn't encounter it. Your mind builds a pattern, feeding the illusion that something is happening more frequently than it actually is. It's not deception. It's cognitive efficiency. Your brain cutting corners to process a noisy world. This effect shows up with words, cars, songs, symbols, even people. You learn a new fact, and suddenly the world seems saturated with it. But the saturation is internal, a perceptual spotlight, not a real increase. Reality didn't change. You did. The frequency illusion is a reminder that our experience of the world is filtered through perception, memory, and bias. Your brain is constantly constructing your reality, and sometimes that construction makes the familiar feel invisible and the newly discovered feel omnipresent. It's the mental equivalent of tuning a radio. Once you're on the right frequency, you start hearing the same signal everywhere. What if your brain decided half the world no longer existed, and you didn't even notice? Imagine eating only the right side of your plate, shaving only one side of your face, or drawing just half a clock. For many stroke victims, this isn't a quirk, it's a daily reality. It's called hemispatial neglect, a neurological condition where damage to one hemisphere of the brain causes the person to ignore the opposite side of space, not out of choice, but because their brain no longer recognizes it exists. The most common form occurs after damage to the right parietal lobe, leading to neglect of the left side of reality. Patients may bump into walls, fail to dress the left half of their body, or deny ownership of their left arm altogether. But here's what makes it eerie. They don't feel like anything is missing. Their world feels whole, even though half of it is gone. Hemispatial neglect is not blindness. The eyes work. The visual cortex works. But the awareness is fractured. The problem lies in attention, not sensation. The brain fails to attend to one side of space, and as a result, that side vanishes from conscious experience. Even when shown their mistake, patients often insist everything looks normal. That's how deep the illusion runs. This condition challenges our very definition of perception. It proves that seeing isn't just about input, it's about awareness. And when awareness breaks, reality itself becomes lopsided. Now, imagine how fragile your reality truly is. How one injury, one burst of damaged neurons could split your world in half and leave you feeling completely whole. Hemispatial neglect isn't just a deficit. It's a glimpse into how much of your life is constructed by where your mind chooses to look. What if your mind's greatest strength, pattern recognition, was also its biggest trap? Imagine staring at clouds and seeing faces, or hearing secret messages in static. You know it's random, but it still feels deliberate. Now, imagine seeing those patterns in world events, numbers, people, systems. You start connecting dots no one else sees. That's apophenia, a powerful cognitive phenomenon where your brain perceives meaningful connections in meaningless data. At its core, apophenia is the human brain trying to make sense of chaos. It evolved to detect predators and shadows, patterns in weather, signals in noise. Better to see danger where there is none than to miss a threat. But this instinct, when overactive, creates illusions. You find significance where there is only coincidence. And that makes you feel like you've discovered a hidden truth. Apophenia explains conspiracy theories, numerology, gambling superstition, and even cult behavior. It's why someone might see divine signs in everyday numbers or believe a global event was orchestrated by an unseen force. To the person experiencing it, these connections are real because they're emotionally charged and cognitively sticky. Once the mind forms a pattern, it's hard to unsee it. In neuroscience, apophenia is related to dopaminergic activity, too much dopamine, and the brain over patterns. This is common in schizophrenia, where individuals may weave intricate connections between unrelated events. But even healthy brains do it. From horoscopes to lucky socks, apophenia is everywhere. It's a double-edged sword. Pattern recognition helped us survive, but it also fuels delusion. The line between insight and illusion is razor thin, and apophenia is the force walking that line, whispering that nothing is random, even when it is. What if everything you experience, sight, sound, touch, thought, was happening separately, in pieces, and your brain was just pretending it's one seamless moment? Imagine watching a bird fly. You see its wings flap, hear its chirp, feel the breeze pass by. It all feels unified. One moment, one world. But that's an illusion. Each sense is processed in a different part of your brain, on different timelines, using different circuits. So here's the mystery. How does it all come together? That's the binding problem. Your brain doesn't experience reality. It reconstructs it. Visual information hits the occipital lobe. Sound goes to the auditory cortex. Touch lands in the somatosensory strip. Identity, memory, thought, those are somewhere else entirely. There is no central hub where it all fuses. And yet, your consciousness feels whole. That illusion of wholeness is what scientists call binding. And it's one of the deepest unsolved questions in neuroscience. Some theories say synchronized brainwaves might bind separate inputs by timing them together. Others argue there's no true binding, just the illusion of continuity, created by memory stitching fragments together. But even that raises more questions. If your experience is delayed, edited, and assembled on the fly, how real is now? This problem matters because it strikes at the core of who you think you are. If your self is made of fragments, and those fragments only feel unified through process, then consciousness isn't a single flame. It's a swarm of sparks arranged to look like one. Now, imagine how delicate that arrangement must be. The binding problem isn't just about perception. It's about the secret architecture holding your mind together. And if we don't know how it binds, what happens when it doesn't? Imagine the exhilarating rush of a New Year's Eve countdown, feeling like the slate of your life is wiped clean as the clock strikes midnight. But what if this fresh start isn't actually new? What if it's just a clever psychological illusion your brain creates to help you forget your past mistakes? Welcome to the clean slate illusion, a captivating quirk of human cognition. Our minds desperately crave order and meaning, constantly seeking ways to simplify the overwhelming chaos of life's experiences. This is why we set resolutions, initiate drastic changes, or embark on new chapters at symbolic moments, like birthdays, moving homes, or starting a new job. Psychologists refer to these as temporal landmarks, significant markers our brains use to compartmentalize experiences, creating the illusion that we're starting anew. Consider the person who decides to reinvent themselves after a painful breakup, cutting their hair, changing their wardrobe, and declaring a new me. This isn't just fashion, it's the brain employing a coping mechanism. Research by psychologist Catherine Milkman shows that we're more likely to initiate positive habits around these temporal landmarks because we mentally detach from past failures, feeling psychologically reborn. Yet, beneath this illusion lies a subtle deception. Our brains haven't actually erased mistakes, they've merely hidden them behind a mental curtain. The mistakes still exist, influencing our subconscious choices and behaviors. The clean slate illusion tricks us into ignoring past lessons, sometimes causing repetitive patterns of behavior. So, next time you feel that seductive rush of a fresh start, pause and reflect. Your brain is playing a comforting yet risky game, helping you move forward but potentially making you forget critical lessons. Perhaps true growth doesn't require erasing the past, but courageously embracing it, flaws and all. What if everything you see as smooth, fluid motion was actually just your eyes holding on to past images? Imagine sitting in a theater, watching characters move effortlessly across a screen. In reality, you're seeing 24 still pictures every second. Not motion, but snapshots. Yet, your brain blends them seamlessly, creating continuous movement. This phenomenon is called persistence of vision, a powerful optical illusion where images linger briefly on the retina, overlapping just enough to create the illusion of motion. Here's how it works. When your eye captures an image, that image doesn't instantly vanish. It remains imprinted on your retina for a fraction of a second, roughly 1/25th of a second. During that tiny interval, if another image appears, the two fuse. Repeat this rapidly, and static frames blur into lifelike motion. This is the secret behind cinema, animation, and even flipbooks. It's why you perceive reality smoothly, even though your brain receives disjointed visual snapshots. But persistence of vision isn't just a neat visual trick. It reveals something profound about perception itself. Your eyes don't report continuous reality. They provide discrete, rapidly refreshed images. Your brain does the heavy lifting, stitching these flickers into a seamless stream of consciousness. Without this visual buffering, life would stutter like a poorly rendered video. This illusion is fragile. Flicker the frames too slowly, and the illusion breaks. Motion becomes jittery, unsettling, fake. But at just the right speed, the magic happens. Still images vanish, replaced by the vivid fluidity of life. Now, imagine how many other illusions your brain creates without you knowing. Persistence of vision isn't just about movies. It's a glimpse into how your mind fabricates continuity from fragments. It's proof that seeing isn't always believing. Sometimes, it's blending. Imagine desperately trying to break a bad habit, checking your progress obsessively, only to find yourself stuck deeper than ever before. What if your intense scrutiny is precisely what's keeping you trapped? Welcome to the psychological twist on the quantum Zeno effect, a fascinating phenomenon where attention itself freezes behavior patterns, making them resistant to change. Originally discovered in quantum physics, the quantum Zeno effect demonstrates that frequently observing a particle prevents it from changing states. Remarkably, psychology reveals a similar paradox. Constantly monitoring habits or anxieties can ironically reinforce them, creating a mental lock that becomes nearly impossible to break. The more you anxiously watch your smoking habit or diet, the more resistant these behaviors become to improvement. Consider someone struggling with social anxiety, continuously observing their nervousness during interactions, meticulously analyzing every word and gesture. This constant self-monitoring magnifies anxiety, solidifying it rather than alleviating it. Similarly, the dieter fixated on calorie counting may feel trapped by their fixation, unable to break free from obsessive eating habits precisely because their attention reinforces these behaviors. Research from cognitive behavioral psychology supports this phenomenon. Excessive self-focus activates parts of the brain associated with habitual responses, freezing unwanted behaviors into place. Counterintuitively, stepping back, reducing scrutiny, and allowing space for subconscious adjustment is often key to real, lasting change. So, next time you're caught in a loop of obsessive observation, remember, the quantum Zeno effect warns us that sometimes less attention leads to greater transformation. True change isn't forced through constant vigilance. Often, it flourishes quietly when we trust our subconscious minds to guide us toward growth. Imagine standing at the edge of danger, your heart racing, senses heightened, and suddenly the world around you slows dramatically, as if reality itself switched to slow motion. What if this isn't just your imagination, but your brain genuinely altering your perception of time under intense stress? This phenomenon, known as time dilation perception, is a remarkable survival mechanism deeply wired into our neurological fabric. When confronted with trauma or severe danger, your brain shifts into hyper-awareness, capturing moments in extraordinary detail. Neuroscientists have discovered that during high-stress scenarios, the amygdala, a brain region controlling fear responses, signals other areas like the hippocampus and prefrontal cortex to drastically boost attention and memory encoding. As a result, each second feels stretched, as your brain processes far more information than usual. Consider someone involved in a sudden car crash. Victims often report detailed recollections of tiny details like shards of glass suspended mid-air or vivid facial expressions frozen in a split second of panic. Studies by neuroscientist David Eagleman suggest that this intensified perception occurs because the brain, in crisis mode, records experiences in extremely high resolution, packing more sensory data into memory, thereby creating the illusion of slowed time. This phenomenon isn't about actual physics, but the speed and density of neural processing. Under extreme stress, your mind activates an evolutionary advantage, ensuring you vividly remember every crucial detail, enhancing your chances of survival and future avoidance. So, next time danger makes seconds stretch like minutes, remember, your brain isn't deceiving you. It's capturing reality in stunning detail, revealing just how powerful and adaptive our minds can truly be. Imagine standing at the edge of your consciousness, where everything familiar suddenly melts away. Ego dissolution, a profound psychological phenomenon often triggered by psychedelics, completely dismantles your core sense of self. It's not just losing your identity, it's experiencing reality without the filter of your ego, the very boundary that defines your I. What if, for a brief moment, your personal history, your fears, desires, and even the basic concept of you disappeared entirely? Under substances like psilocybin, LSD, or ayahuasca, the brain regions responsible for self-awareness, such as the default mode network, temporarily reduce their activity, dissolving the ego boundary. People who've undergone ego dissolution describe feeling an intense interconnectedness, a merging with the universe so vivid that distinctions between self, space, and time vanish completely. For instance, someone might suddenly perceive themselves not as an isolated individual, but as inseparable from the cosmos, a leaf, or even the person next to them. This collapse can be deeply therapeutic, altering life perspectives profoundly. Researchers highlight this experience as potentially life-changing. Studies suggest it helps individuals overcome depression, anxiety, and addiction by reshaping how they view themselves and the world around them. But there's also an unsettling intensity to ego dissolution. Without your usual mental anchors, you confront raw, unfiltered existence, an experience some find profoundly beautiful, while others see it as deeply terrifying. Ultimately, ego dissolution challenges the very nature of reality itself, suggesting that our ordinary perception might only be a thin veil covering a deeper, more unified truth. What if reality as you know it is merely a comforting illusion? Imagine your legs suddenly feeling 100 pounds heavier, anchored firmly by an unseen force. Physically, nothing has changed, yet your experience is utterly convincing, the sensation undeniably real. This remarkable phenomenon, known scientifically as heavy legs hypnosis, showcases the incredible power our minds wield over bodily sensations. Our brains have an extraordinary ability to convert mere suggestion into tangible, physical experiences. Hypnosis practitioners commonly leverage this connection, guiding subjects to vividly experience sensations like heaviness or immobility. For instance, during hypnotic sessions, individuals frequently report limbs becoming inexplicably heavy after simply hearing hypnotic cues suggesting this effect. Their muscles relax profoundly, responding directly to beliefs formed within their subconscious minds. Scientific investigations have confirmed this mind-body interaction. Neurological studies using functional MRI scans reveal heightened activity in regions governing sensory perception and motor control during hypnotic suggestion. Even though no external force acts upon the body, neural circuits become activated exactly as if a physical weight truly existed. The brain's perception overrides reality, creating genuine physical sensations solely through the power of belief. In a notable experiment at Stanford University, participants under hypnosis were convinced their limbs had grown impossibly heavy. Astonishingly, despite having normal muscular strength, many struggled significantly to raise their arms. Their brains had internalized the hypnotic suggestion, producing authentic sensations of immense weight. This compelling phenomenon demonstrates the incredible influence belief and suggestion have over our physical experiences. It's a testament to how profoundly the mind can reshape reality, proving that our thoughts alone can alter how our bodies truly feel. Imagine staring intently at a moving object and suddenly realizing that the stationary objects around it mysteriously vanish from sight, hidden by your own mind. This unsettling phenomenon, known as motion-induced blindness, exposes a profound truth about human perception. Our brains sometimes erase reality right in front of our eyes. Motion-induced blindness occurs when continuous motion in your visual field causes your brain to suppress surrounding stationary stimuli. Neurologically, this happens because our visual system prioritizes detecting changes in motion as critical survival cues. If something remains still for too long, your brain categorizes it as irrelevant, effectively making it invisible. Consider driving late at night on a long, empty road, eyes fixed on the moving center line. You might fail to notice stationary objects, like parked cars or signs, until they suddenly reappear, shocking you into awareness. Experiments conducted by researchers at Yale University confirm this effect. When participants fixated on a moving central pattern, stationary dots around it consistently disappeared from view, despite still physically existing. This effect reveals a critical vulnerability. Our attention is easily fooled, causing important details to slip unnoticed. Motion-induced blindness highlights a paradox. While motion alerts us to immediate threats, intense focus on it can blind us to static yet vital elements of reality. The implications extend far beyond vision, reflecting life's broader truth. Relentless pursuit or obsession with a single goal can blind you to critical aspects around you. Next time your focus narrows, remember, sometimes the very act of intense attention may obscure reality itself, reminding us that clarity often requires stepping back and seeing the broader view. Imagine looking into the eyes of someone you've cherished your entire life, only to feel a chilling certainty that they're not truly them. Capgras delusion is a rare psychological condition where sufferers become convinced that loved ones have been replaced by exact replicas, imposters who perfectly mimic appearances yet lack authenticity. What if your mind suddenly severed the critical link between recognition and emotional attachment? Neuroscience reveals that Capgras occurs when damage disrupts pathways between the facial recognition areas in the temporal lobe and the emotional centers in the limbic system. You recognize your mother's face, her voice, her gestures, yet feel no emotional warmth or connection. This emotional disconnect breeds suspicion, compelling you to rationalize that she must be a stranger disguised as your loved one. Consider the terror of living in perpetual distrust. Patients have described their spouses, children, or even themselves as being replaced, sometimes leading to profound distress or paranoia. One notable example involved a man adamantly convinced his wife was an identical imposter. He recognized every detail of her appearance, yet insisted she was an elaborate fake. Capgras delusion underscores how delicately our brains balance cognition and emotion. It reveals that the deepest truths about identity and trust aren't merely cognitive, they're profoundly emotional. Without emotion validating recognition, reality itself becomes suspect. Ultimately, Capgras delusion forces us to confront a haunting question. What truly makes someone familiar? Is it their appearance or something deeper and intangible? Imagine how fragile your reality would become if emotion no longer validated your perception. Imagine recalling a cherished memory, vividly reliving every detail, only to discover later that your mind has altered it subtly with each retelling. This phenomenon, known as the telephone game effect, reveals a profound and unsettling truth. Our memories aren't permanent records, but fragile, ever-changing stories. Scientific research confirms that each time we access a memory, we're not retrieving a fixed file from our minds, but reconstructing it anew. Neuroscientists describe this as memory reconsolidation. Each retrieval reactivates the memory, allowing details to be altered, reshaped, or even fabricated. Like whispering a message around a circle, small errors and distortions accumulate over time, making the memory increasingly distant from the original event. A pivotal study by psychologist Elizabeth Loftus demonstrated this vividly. Participants watched footage of a car accident and later received subtly altered questions. Those asked how fast the cars smashed into each other recalled seeing shattered glass, despite none existing. Their memories had changed significantly based solely on how questions were framed. This proved memory's incredible susceptibility to external influence. Every retelling introduces new distortions, especially influenced by emotion, expectation, or suggestion. Our brains continuously integrate new context, reshaping memories to align with our current feelings and beliefs. Over years, cherished events or traumatic incidents can become entirely reshaped narratives, far removed from the factual past. Understanding the telephone game effect reminds us of the delicate nature of memory, highlighting that what we believe to be true about our past is often a fluid story, continually rewritten by our minds with every recollection. Imagine suddenly finding yourself floating above your body, watching your physical self from a vantage point near the ceiling, seeing everything in vivid detail. Known as an out-of-body experience, OBE, this startling phenomenon is more than a mystical anecdote. It's scientifically documented and deeply studied in neuroscience laboratories worldwide. Researchers have found that OBEs typically occur during moments of extreme stress, trauma, or sensory deprivation. Neuroscientific studies suggest these experiences arise from disruptions in the brain's temporoparietal junction, an area crucial for integrating sensory information and maintaining a coherent sense of self and body. When this integration falters, the brain creates a vivid illusion of being outside the physical body. Consider the case studies documented in Swiss neuroscientist Olaf Blanca's experiments, where precise electrical stimulation of the temporoparietal junction consistently induced OBEs. Patients reported seeing themselves lying down from a bird's-eye view, perfectly convinced by the illusion, despite knowing they were physically stationary. Additionally, OBEs have been replicated in lab settings using virtual reality headsets combined with synchronized sensory inputs, further validating their neurological origin. Volunteers immersed in these controlled simulations genuinely felt they inhabited a body positioned outside their actual physical location. These remarkable studies prove OBEs aren't mere imagination. They're powerful examples of how fragile our perception of self truly is. By understanding OBEs, science sheds light on the brain's incredible capacity to create illusions of profound realism, revealing deep truths about consciousness itself. Next time someone describes floating above their body, remember, this is more than fantasy. It's a window into the astonishing complexities and vulnerabilities of the human brain. Imagine touching two separate points on your skin, but strangely feeling a third phantom sensation somewhere in between, a tactile ghost your brain conjures from nowhere. This mysterious phenomenon is known as the tactile displacement illusion, revealing just how easily our senses can blur the lines of reality. What if your mind, in its constant quest to interpret the world, mistakenly merges two distinct sensations into one misplaced experience, Neuroscience explains this occurs because our brains continuously synthesize sensory input to create cohesive perceptions. When two simultaneous touches occur close together, our neural processing sometimes miscalculates their exact locations, blending them into a single phantom sensation. Imagine pressing lightly on your forearm and hand simultaneously, but suddenly feeling as if someone is gently touching your wrist, a place untouched. Experiments show people frequently report this illusion, vividly sensing a contact point that never physically existed. Our brains essentially create a new sensory reality from ambiguous signals, highlighting how perception isn't merely about detecting sensations, it's actively constructed by your brain. This phenomenon isn't just a curious trick. It underscores fundamental insights into human perception. It reveals the brain's astonishing flexibility in interpreting sensory information, even fabricating sensations to fill perceived gaps. Such illusions remind us that what we feel isn't always a perfect reflection of physical reality. Ultimately, the tactile displacement illusion compels us to question the reliability of our senses. What if much of our perceived reality is a constructed interpretation rather than an accurate depiction of the physical world? Imagine two events happening seconds apart. Your phone buzzes and a second later, the power goes out. Your brain instinctively connects them. But what if they are completely unrelated? This mental glitch is called temporal binding. It's a cognitive bias where events occurring close together in time feel causally linked, even when they aren't. Our brains are wired to find patterns. In a chaotic world, this shortcut helps us predict and survive. Temporal binding is part of that mechanism. Neuroscientists have shown that the brain compresses time between actions and outcomes. For instance, if you press a button and a light turns on shortly after, your brain perceives the delay as shorter than it really is, almost as if your action pulled the event closer in time. This illusion makes the world feel more coherent, but it can also mislead us. In one experiment, participants were told to press a button, which triggered a tone 250 milliseconds later. Over time, they perceived the tone as happening almost simultaneously with the button press. This shows how the brain rewrites time to create causal links, but the effect doesn't stop there. Imagine witnessing someone trip right after you think of something mean. Suddenly you feel responsible, even though your thought had no influence. This is how superstition, paranoia, and magical thinking take root. Temporal binding links unrelated events, painting false patterns and feeding distorted beliefs. Understanding temporal binding reveals just how easily time perception can betray us. We feel cause and effect not because it's real, but because our brains crave order. In this craving, we often find connections where none exist. Imagine building a perfect replica of your brain. Every neuron, every synapse, every electrical signal reproduced in exact detail. It thinks, reacts, and even mimics your speech. But here's the terrifying question. Would it feel anything? This is the hard problem of consciousness, and it remains one of the greatest mysteries in science. We understand much about the brain. We can map its regions, simulate neural activity, and predict behavior. But what we can't explain is the raw, subjective experience, what it feels like to taste chocolate, to hear music, or to feel sadness. Neuroscientist David Chalmers coined this paradox. Why does brain activity come with an inner life? We can track the chemical reaction of fear, but why does fear feel so intense inside us? Consider a robot programmed to scream when harmed. It behaves like it's in pain, but we know it doesn't suffer. Now turn the lens on yourself. How do you know you're not just a machine acting out emotions? What makes your internal world different from a simulation? This gap between physical processes and subjective experience is what makes consciousness so hard to explain. Even advanced brain imaging only shows correlations. This area lights up when you feel joy, but it doesn't explain the why of feeling. No science has yet bridged the chasm between matter and mind. Some theories suggest consciousness arises from complex computation. Others propose it's fundamental, like space and time. The truth? We don't know. Consciousness might be the ultimate illusion, a trick evolution played on matter to keep it surviving. Or it might be something deeper, beyond atoms, beyond neurons. Until we solve it, we live in a body we understand, haunted by a mind we don't.